is provided by Sonoma Paint Center, located at 815 West Napa Street. For more information, you can go to sonomapaintcenter.com.
Current regular meeting of Sonoma City Council as the successor agency to the dissolved Sonoma Community Development Agency. This is Monday, November 21st, and at this point, we're convening and we're calling to order and doing the Pledge of Allegiance. And we have Leslie Nicholson that will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Leslie. We'll do roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte. Here. Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Councilmember Henley.
Here.
Councilmember Cook.
Here.
Mayor Gallion.
Present.
Thank you.
And with that, we have a report on closed session. Our city attorney, Jeff Walters, will give that.
Thank you, Mayor. The council did meet in closed session for the items posted on the agenda, but has nothing to report out at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we'll move on to comments from the public. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda. It is recommended that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Under state law, matters represented under this item cannot be discussed or acted upon by the City Council at this time. For items appearing on the agenda, the public will be invited to make comments at the time the item comes up for council consideration. Upon being acknowledged by the mayor, please step to the podium and speak into the microphone. Begin by stating and spelling your name and your address. Public comment is now open.
My name is Leslie Nicholson, Leslie-Nicolson, and I live at 18552 Happy Lane. And I'm here tonight to just announce a save the date for Thursday, February 16th, 2017. I am the director of a new nonprofit in Sonoma called RISK Sonoma, which stands for Resources, Information, Support, and Knowledge. And we are presenting 2 community forums on teen substance abuse in Sonoma Valley. Our first panel will focus on prescription drug abuse. Our second panel is scheduled for April. Each of our panel speakers will also be visiting with our older middle school students. We are also hoping they will have the chance to visit with our high school students. It will be at Altamira Middle School from 6 to 8. We have a board of directors and panel development committee, which includes law enforcement, city council, legal professionals, school administrators, parents, local business professionals, and professionals from the Sonoma Valley Health Center. RISK Sonoma is a newly established 501c3 nonprofit in Sonoma Valley. Our mission is to provide a parent support network for all parents. We are developing programs to educate and support parents, as well as proactively bring the issues of substance abuse to the forefront, helping to reduce the substance abuse rates amongst our children and teens. As we've said many times, we need healthy, supported, educated, and resourceful parents to be able to prevent and deal with the potentially harmful issues our kids deal with on a daily basis. So,
Thank you. And would you like to introduce your other board member?
yes, this is Dina Welch.
Dina Welch, DINAWELCH, 1069 East Napa Street.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And yes, if you want that to come to the council members, you can just give it to Rebecca, our city clerk. Anyone else wishing to speak on public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Are there any meeting dedications, council members? Okay, any presentations? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar order for City Council. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. At this time, council may decide to change the order of the agenda. Council members, any actions? Let's open this up to the public. Is there any actions of the public or comments on the consent calendar? Seeing none, let's bring it back to council. Looking for discussion or action. Mayor Pro Tem Madeline Agramonte.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. If there aren't any questions or changes to the consent agenda calendar, I'd like to make a motion to approve 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, 4E, 4F, and 4G.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Cook is seconding. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the roll call vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte,
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Councilmember Hunley.
Yes.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Mayor Gallion.
Aye. So with that, we have a 5-0 vote to pass the consent agenda and agenda order for this evening. Our next item is the consent calendar agenda order for City Council as successor agency. And at this point, I see no items on that, so we will move directly to our public hearing. This is item 6A, discussion, consideration, and possible action to conduct first reading and public hearing on the extension of an interim moratorium ordinance on the approval of applications for vacation rentals, including the adoption of a report specifying the measures taken to alleviate the conditions which led to its adoption. And with that, we have Planning Director David Goodison.
Thank you, Mayor Gallion, members of the City Council. The Council has decided to review and possibly modify the zoning regulations that apply to vacation rentals. In order to prevent the approval of new applications for vacation rentals while that discussion occurs, at its meeting of October 17th, the Council adopted an interim moratorium ordinance that applies to such applications. Under state law, upon the initial adoption of such an ordinance, its initial term is limited to 45 days, after which it expires unless extended by a vote of the council within that period. The council may choose to extend an interim moratorium ordinance twice, first for an initial period of 10 months and 15 days, and then for another year. So we are within that 45-day period, and we are here in this public hearing to recommend that the council adopt an extension of the interim moratorium ordinance because the discussions pertaining to vacation rentals are still underway. So the attached ordinance would accomplish that. Later on on tonight's agenda, there's another item that speaks more to the different issues and options associated with possibly modifying the rules pertaining to vacation rentals. This item is simply limited to the extension of the interim moratorium ordinance. Thank you.
All right. Council members, any questions for staff? Then I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing, and anyone wishing to address us from the public, please step forward.
Good evening, Council. Larry Barnett, 5th Street East. Just rising to quickly voice my continued support for this moratorium to give you adequate time to consider any changes you want to make in the ordinance governing vacation rentals. So I'm supportive of this effort tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I'm looking for action or direction from council.
Well, Madam Mayor, if no one has any questions or comments, I'd certainly like to make a motion to adopt an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sonoma extending interim restrictions on vacation rentals pending the consideration and study of zoning and other land use regulations pertaining to vacation rentals in the city.
I'll second that.
All right, we have Mayor Pro Tem as the motion. We have Councilmember Edwards as the second. Do we have any further discussion? I would just like to say that I am all in favor of this. I will be supporting this particular action, as I feel that there are many issues that are coming before us probably after the first of the year. And I think that this is a good time for us to take the time to make sure that we have an adequate period for review. And all parties are notified and will be knowing that this is what's happening. So with that, I'll do a roll call vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte,
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Hunley,
Yes.
Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
Mayor Gallion.
Aye, so with that, we have a 5-0 on this item. That's an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Sonoma extending interim restrictions on vacation rentals pending the consideration and study of zoning and other land use regulations pertaining to vacation rentals in the city. That concludes our public hearing portion. We will then move to our regular calendar with item 7A. Item 7A is consideration, discussion, and possible action to adopt a resolution approving an application by Destination Races for temporary use of city streets for the Napa to Sonoma Wine Country Half Marathon on Sunday, July 16, 2017. The Special Events Manager, Lisa, will now take over.
Good evening, City Council members. I'd like to take a moment and just provide some background information on the steps that have been taken by city staff, the SEC, and the Community Service Environmental Commission to review the plaza use application and the request to use city streets, and to address any questions you may have regarding the supplemental report, the 2017 SEC pre-event report, and the 2016 SEC post-event report that was submitted. In September of 2016, Destination Races, the event organizer, submitted a plaza permit application for their Napa to Sonoma Wine Country Half Marathon scheduled for July 16, 2017. Included with the plaza permit application was a street use permit, a permit application for possession and consumption of alcoholic beverages on city property, the waste minimization plan, a route map, a site plan, event budget, and photo of the finish line delineation. The SEC reviewed the application on October 5th, 2016. The SEC post-event 2016 review, approved September 4th, 2016 by the CSEC, was a fundamental component of the review process. The 2016 CSEC post-event review was created with input from previous meetings/discussions with the street supervisor, police chief, director of public works, and the fire marshal and park supervisor, in an effort to address the issues that were reported/observed during the 2016 event. As you are aware, the street resolution was added to the City Council agenda on November 7th and was not approved pending request for additional information in order to make a decision, including the CSEC review and approval of the plaza permit application. The CSEC reviewed the plaza use application and request to reserve public parking on November 9th, 2016, and approved the application unanimously with the additional provisions as noted in the supplemental report that you received. Destination Races has requested the temporary use of the city streets for the Napa to Sonoma Wine Country Half Marathon as follows. Closure of East Napa Street between Broadway and First Street East from 6:30 a.m. until 11 a.m. on Sunday, July the 16th, 2017. Closure of the northbound far right lane of Broadway between East MacArthur and the plaza, including road closure signs at Chase, France, and Patton Streets, from 7:15 a.m. until 11 o'clock a.m. on Sunday, July the 16th, 2017. Closure of East MacArthur Street between 2nd Street East and Broadway from 7:50 a.m. until 11 a.m. on Sunday, July 16th, 2017. Closure of Denmark Streets between the high school and Napa Road from 7:15 a.m. until 10:45 a.m. on Sunday, July the 16th, 2017. The applicant will be responsible for providing notice to all residents and businesses affected by the street closures in the affected areas. Of Denmark between High School and Napa Road from 7:15 to 10:45, MacArthur between 2nd Street East and Broadway from 7:50 to 11 a.m., Chase Street between Broadway and Austin Avenue from 7:50 to 11 a.m., France Street between Broadway and Austin Avenue from 7:50 until 11 a.m., Patton Street between Broadway and 1st Street East from 7:50 to 11 a.m., Broadway between MacArthur and the Plaza from 7:50 to 11 a.m., and East Napa Street between Broadway and 1st Street East. The applicant will be required to hire a professional traffic safety entity to assist with all detours within the city limits. The action before you tonight is to adopt the resolution approving the use of the city streets, which includes the conditions recommended by the Special Events Committee members and the CSCC. If you have any questions on any of the aforementioned items, I'm available to answer your questions. Thank you.
Council members, thank you very much, Lisa. Council members, any questions? Councilmember Hundley.
I have a question, and I don't know if the applicant will be speaking tonight, but the question I have is if you can explain explicitly what the benefits are to the residents that live here for closing these specific streets that day.
Can I sit down and let the
Yes.
applicant?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Doxson.
Good evening, Matt Dockstetter, Destination Races. I'm also here with Kevin Poole, who's our Director of Operations. So the question is, what are the benefits to the residents of Sonoma, in particular the ones that are affected, you mean along the course route?
Well, no, today we're talking about the streets being closed. That's just a decision that we're making today. So specifically to the residents of Sonoma, what are the benefits to them of closing these streets?
Well, the benefits to Sonoma, and I've provided an economic impact report, I think, in the last meeting. So the benefit overall, we're talking about to Sonoma and as an entity, as a city, is obviously, and the people that own businesses in the town, is the increased revenues that are generated, because the economic impact is in the millions. Now, if you're talking about specific residents, how are they affected by it? That depends on the resident. A lot of people get very excited about these events, and they come out and they support it and they watch it, and it becomes something they're really proud of and enjoy seeing people, and they have an opportunity to run it if they really want to. So we do have quite a few runners that come from Sonoma. I don't know if any of them are here tonight, but I know that we didn't ask people specifically to come to this, but there are a lot of runners in town that support this event, that live in town. So it just depends on the individual, but whenever there's an event that a running event or a parade or whatever the case may be, 4th of July, farmers market, you're impacted. We all know that, in the sense that you're not going to have as easy as an access as you normally would that day. So our event, though, really the impact is only on Sunday morning. We open it up at 11 a.m. Most businesses are not even open until after 11 a.m. So, if you're talking about impacting the residents, the ones that live along the route have ways to get out. There's Napa Road, and there's also Spain Street. So they're not locked in, which I think is maybe a misconception. So what Kevin and I are doing is providing more information at the request of Council and CSCC also, and we had that discussion about having flaggers and detour routes and putting it in the newspaper and making people more aware of it. So I think the issue really becomes, if people are aware of it, they'll take the detour. They won't run right into where the closure is along Broadway or MacArthur in that one section. But I think the impact is pretty minimal compared to the overall benefits, which is the money that goes into local charities, $3 million of fundraising to Crohn's and Colitis Foundation and American Diabetes, and the overall goodwill that this event creates. It's a healthy lifestyle event. The wineries benefit, the hotels benefit, the restaurants benefit. There's so much benefit. The individuals that run it benefit. So, I think sometimes it just becomes a little bit of a, looking inside yourself and say, gee, I have to detour 5 minutes today on Sunday while all these positive things happen. And that's the question residents have to ask themselves.
Well, my question was specifically for Sonoma. I know you have an economic impact report, but it seems to be for the whole area. But do you have any data of what hotels, what percentage of your runners, what hotels they stay in, how many actually shop at the shops or eat at restaurants? Like, do you have the data specifically for the city of Sonoma?
Yeah, I mean, they break it down. We ask people how much money they spend. I mean, obviously, not all of it is spent in Sonoma. People are going to Napa as well. People are staying as far away as Fairfield for this event because you can't get a hotel room that weekend unless there's, cancellation. So they're staying all over. They're renting, the bungalows. I know that, what you're talking about vacation rentals, I guarantee you most of the vacation rentals are filled by runners that weekend. Talk to the hotel people. I mean, we've had room blocks from the Lodge at Sonoma and MacArthur Place and others where they gave us a room block in the past. They won't even give us room blocks anymore because they know they're going to sell out that weekend with the runners. And so we can't track it. We don't benefit from it. We don't get a commission off of it like we used to because they know they're going to sell out. Sonoma Mission Inn is one of the few, I think El Pueblo. But anyway, we're filling the hotels, we're filling the shops, we're filling the restaurants. And, I'm happy to get more information from them, but we don't track how much they're spending specifically in particular restaurants, but we know that the hotels are full. And we know that it's primarily, because of that event. I mean, they're going to be 60, 70% full anyway on that weekend, but we completely sell it out.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Edwards.
So in listening to the comments from the last meeting, we talked about millions of dollars being raised with this, and I'm looking at the numbers here where the contribution to local nonprofits is only $32,000. And with the 8,000 people that come to the plaza, it seemed that's only $2.75 per person.
Well, the 8,000, a lot of those are coming from our local people too. I mean, there are people that come out and watch this race, and so a lot of that is just, the general traffic from, people that are in town anyway or coming out to watch the race. So I don't know that breaking it down by 8,000 is, because a lot of them are friends and family or whatever, so.
Yeah, I guess my
they're not
question,
paying to be in the event.
and maybe a comment is that if it's raising millions, I'm not sure why it's such a low number for, I believe there's a percentage that's required for.
But this is a national charity partner.
I understand, but a for-profit use on the plaza. So maybe it's a question for staff. Can you help me with that, Carol?
Well, it's a percentage, but it depends on how it's calculated. I think that what he's referring to is what he raises overall for the millions. And again, I'm assuming how Mr. Dostetter characterizes the millions of dollars. And he would have to give us more detail on how he characterizes that.
I mean, the reason why I bring it up is that I've had lots of phone calls and people that
Correct.
have, said, here, this is coming up again, and they're speaking about it, and they're wondering what the benefit is that actually comes back for closing our streets, even though it's only a morning. But I remember it very well last year, and the amount of phone calls that I think probably all of you received at that time. And I just think it's something where we're doubling the size of our population for a morning in town, and I think we're putting a lot of stretch on our resources, law enforcement, as well as just traffic and the plaza and et cetera. So.
Well, Gary, let me put it to you this. I'm sorry, go ahead, Carol. The fundraising is done by individuals. Just so you know, it's, they're requested. They have to raise a certain amount of money. I think it's $2,500 per person to be in the event. That's where that. So when people hear that big number, they think we have that money. We don't touch that money. So that has nothing to do with us.
That's why when it came up at the last meeting, and it's coming up at this meeting, that we're raising millions of dollars.
But that's a good thing.
Well, no, I understand that. I work in fundraising all the time, but it's not what this event is fundraising in. The event's raising the funds, but it's not necessarily for.
So we're putting in. We're going to pay. I think Lisa, we figured out. It's about $18,000 just for us to pay City of Sonoma to have this event, whether it's law enforcement or plaza use, public works. So we're paying $18,000 to the city. In addition to that, and then we have all of our other costs associated with the event, which really don't have anything to do with Sonoma. We're paying out outside of Sonoma. But You know, the other thing is we're providing the amount of exposure. I mean, I know that, you know, I know Johnny and I've worked for many years. You know, I knew Wendy Peterson very well. You know, the Sonoma Valley is promoting itself. There are TOT dollars, I mean, goes towards promoting Sonoma and bringing people to Sonoma. We're doing that for Sonoma in a very positive light, you know, on a national basis for free. You know, that's another benefit that I think is really underestimated here.
Yeah, well, that's where I might disagree with you that it's, you know, it's not free. You know, there may be 18,000 in fees, but we're actually spending that money. The city's actually spending that $18,000 in the fees that we're charging.
Right. I'm just saying we are paying, you know, that much, whereas in a previous meeting somebody said, oh, what are you paying, $3,000? No, I mean, it's $18,000 is what we're paying.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte.
Whatever your name is.
Yes, no, I got you.
So I think I understand what Councilmember Edwards is saying. It's the benefit to the city of Sonoma. For example, I mean, I'm you know, I'm not an attorney, and possibly our Councilmember Hundley could help me with this. But I think what I'm hearing is, what is the benefit? What would, if we have a trust fund here for homeless, if we have something that we put into food programs, is there something that you might share from the proceeds?
We do. We share. We work with, I don't know how many, Kevin, 4 or 5 local nonprofits last year.
Boys Center being the largest of those.
Yeah, I mean, Hannah Boys Center's worked with the event from day one, and you know, so for 14 years we've partnered with Hannah Boys Center, and we give it $20,000 to Hannah Boys Center. They bring us boys and man some of the aid stations and so forth. Save Our Sports and, you know, the middle school, worked for them for years, help support programs. Native Sons, the Sonoma Mentoring Alliance. I mean, we're adding two new charities, CASA, and another one that I think benefits vineyard worker families. This year, FAHA, Finnish American Housing Association, is a great partner with us. I was just over and met with them last weekend, and they love our events, and they all come out and support it. So, you know, over the years, we've probably worked with 10 different nonprofits, and we've given hundreds of thousands of dollars to local nonprofits in Sonoma.
May I ask, Councilmember Edwards, is this something that you are comfortable with then, knowing that part of it goes some part?
Well, I think the comments that I bring up are, you know, mainly where, you know, I don't know how many, I guess it's been going on for 14 years, the event, is what you're saying?
This will be the 14th, yeah.
And, you know, I mean, it's kind of gotten to the point where we have other nonprofits like Nuestra Voz, who they pay, I think, $6,000 to use the plaza, and they have a couple of tents and a bandstand in the back, and, you know, several hundred people show up. And we charge what I believe is an enormous fee for that kind of event. But here we have an event where, you know, there's private areas in the plaza, and there's all kinds of VIP things going on, and so on. And it seems like a very inexpensive venue. Even looking at the 18,000, I think that's a very inexpensive amount of money to have an 8-acre plaza, exclusive use of it, basically.
And we don't have exclusive use. We do leave a quadrant open.
Yeah, but really,
and the access has to be
there's 8,000
there.
people on the plaza. There really is no place for, you know, somebody to go have a picnic or something. I just see it as an overuse of the venue. But I mean, we're here to talk about street closures, and so I'm interested in hearing what the rest of the council has
Perhaps
to say.
we could bring this back, you know, after we have further information. Councilmember Hundley, you have a question?
Yeah, just continuing on the vein of the charitable contributions. So I don't know how long we've had the special events policy where for-profit events, you have to either give 10% of your gross or 40% of your net, whichever is higher. So from the numbers I've seen in the at least for the budget for next year, or I don't know if it was for 16, but it seemed like the amount that was being given to local nonprofits was about half of what it actually should be. 32,000 versus 61,000. So maybe you could explain that part of it.
Right. And this is a conversation we've probably had in the last, 4 times, or I think that we've gotten together with CSC or City Council. And what we did 2 years ago, I believe, when there was a change in policy and this sort of came to light, and it was, it wasn't feasible for us to 10% of gross from basically our budget. And so we said, well, wait a minute, why are we including all revenues for the event, which happens also in other areas in Napa, Cornerstone, Sonoma, all these other places we have to pay for CHP out of Napa County. All these things, the revenues that come in are shared expenses along all those items. So why should we be taking out of all the income for just for the plaza use? Even though it's a major part of the event, it shouldn't be the entire budget. So we decided to everything that was involved in the plaza, all revenues for the plaza, which was all the wine glass sales, the merchandise, the beer tickets, everything that was exhibitors, the booths, all of that revenue, it went towards that, and we were well within the boundaries of that when we were giving $34,000. And that we came up with that formula 2 years ago. So this is just been brought up lately. So, and I thought we had agreed that we were going to stick with it this year, and then that discussion was going to come up if you wanted to bring it up again
Well, I've
for
never
next
heard
year.
of that formula before, but to be fair, I've seen the poster for your race, and it has the Sonoma City Hall on it. So I would say
I know, we're very
without
proud of the
Sonoma,
plaza, and we promote
the whole
it.
event wouldn't be the event that it is. It's not just a piece of it; it's an integral
It's-
part of the entire event.
Well, absolutely. And we, like I said before, we promote Sonoma very, very well. I mean, we're proud of it. So we want that to be a positive thing. We don't want to be punished for it.
Okay, any other questions of council members for the applicants themselves? With that, I'd like to hear more from the public, so I'm going to open up the public comment.
Good evening, Amy Harrington, 235 East Napa. I'm a member of the CSEC, and I just wanted to clarify a point. We did just have this race come before us, and we discussed the topic of how they calculated their charitable donations, and we were given a different response. And the response we were given was that they have a contract with Hannah Boys Center to provide all of the volunteers, and that Hannah Boys Center asked for $20,000 to provide the volunteers that staff their race. This isn't an area of the law that I'm familiar with, but I questioned whether or not that was a true charitable contribution, or in fact that was payment for services that they needed, which was people to staff their race. In addition, they have a contract with the Native Sons, I believe, to provide services to the race so that they can carry it off. So I think that we, I won't speak for the rest of our commission, but I had some concerns that in fact there wasn't really a charitable donation like other for-profit events were giving, because it wasn't based on how much profit they were making. Instead, the fundamental calculation seemed to be how much did people require to provide the volunteers they needed for their event. So I just wanted to share that information with you.
Thank you very much.
Larry Barnett again. There's only one thing that's been triggered in my mind about this. It came up regarding the Williams-Sonoma appeal having to do with a Caltrans encroachment permit. The research that we did, and the city attorney I know was familiar with this, was quite clear that Caltrans does not issue an encroachment permit to for-profit organizations. It only issues it to nonprofits. Now, I went through the agenda packet looking for anything pertaining to the Caltrans encroachment permit. It is in the conditions of approval material that they must have a Caltrans encroachment permit. However, I was unable to find, and I think the packet included material from a previous year's submission, if I understood it correctly. I was unable to find any evidence of an encroachment permit or a copy of one in the packet, let me put it that way. And so I'm simply, I don't want to see the city get in a position of facilitating an illegal use of the state highway. And I want to make sure that there's some sort of feedback loop here, that an encroachment permit, which is required, is actually, a copy of it is actually provided to the city, along with the application that's made to Caltrans, indicating the for-profit or nonprofit status of the organization, because I don't want a city unintentionally back into a problem here. I'll leave the comments as to the inconvenience of this race to those of us who want to get across town. Just to say that I don't know what activity was done last year to promote or to inform the public as to the need for a detour. I wasn't aware of it. All I knew is I tried to get across Broadway and kept finding street after street blocked and didn't really know in advance that that's what was happening on that Sunday morning. Now, it may be because I'm getting old and sort of doltish, but it also may be that the effort to inform the community wasn't robust enough to let the people know who would be most affected, who frankly are on the east side of town, who have to go generally across town if they want to go to one of the larger markets, that this was going to be happening. So whatever their plan is for notification, I would hope that it's more robust this year than it is last year. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item?
Good evening. I'm Fred Allebach at 19550 8th Street East. And I would just like to make some comments about some other events and the fees that I found interesting as a CSEC commissioner. Was that when the B.R. Cohn Music Fest was a very large event that generated a lot of money, and I believe that their event fee was less than, you know, some of the other quite smaller events, so that the fees that get charged in relation to the event income are, you know, seem to be odd. And I think I pointed that out to Carol, and Carol mentioned that you can't charge, it's illegal to charge the fee based on how much they make or something like that. I can't quite remember. But I also remember that Bruce Cohn said about who was going to get the charity money, that, you know, he wasn't gonna give any money to charity of people who didn't come and volunteer. So I think there's a level of quid pro quo in some of these events that ends up happening that, you know, it's not written in stone what it is. So I think that events in general have quite a bit of muddiness to them that, you know, that ends up happening. And I think overall these events end up being beneficial for the community, but they also have certain drawbacks. So that's, you know, that's part of a larger question that maybe goes beyond tonight's meeting, but it's something that I'm interested in looking at as a CSEC commissioner.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to comment on this item? If not, I'll return it to the council. All right. And Councilmember Hundley.
Thank you. So I remember a few years ago, before I was in the council, I was sitting in the audience listening to this conversation between the previous council and Destination Races, and it was a tense conversation then. And from what I've learned from people who've been in the area longer than I have, that this relationship between this event and this city has been tenuous for quite a while. You know, I don't know the rate at which the scale has grown, but the fact is, when this event happens, the size of the city almost doubles. And, you know, I think every year the city council's like, okay, we'll just give them another year, we'll give them another year. But at some certain point, a city of our capacity has a limit. And I feel like we might have gotten there. I think the central part of this conversation for me is about the streets, and it's the fact that the streets, they don't belong to me, but they belong to the residents. And the fact is, last year, out of the use of these public streets, I mean, we were barraged with complaints. Like, it just completely shut down people's lives for over half a day, which might not seem like a lot. Oh, it's only a day. But the fact is, every single weekend of the summer, we have special events. 12 days before this event, we have another event that we have to close down the streets for, and has a similar amount of people, and that's the 4th of July parade. So this is something that people are living through all summer, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I think that that's a reason, if anyone was paying attention during our last campaign season, that a message that was often discussed was the fact that, you know, in the whole tourism resident balance, it's starting to get tipped. And I think that an event like this, where even though I keep asking, like, specifically what is the benefit to Sonoma, like, we can't get a real answer. And you can say hotels, but the fact is we have at least one other annual event that weekend, and it's Gay Wine Weekend, and that's a 3-day event, and they are staying in our hotels, and that's a national and internationally attended event also. So, I mean, the hotels are probably going to be filled either way. I don't want to, take a good economy for granted, but if you're going to try to stuff 8,000 people into a 10,000 person city, I don't think the peak season is probably the best way to do it. So as far as closing the streets, I think that in order to make up for the fact that this is a huge disruption to our lives, I don't think that this is something that most of our residents participate in. I think they try to avoid the plaza at all costs. And I don't see something here that outweighs that disruption. And so that's why we have been asking about, charitable benefits. Is there some way to make up for this thing that's happening that's mostly outside people? I've been to this event. It's huge corporate groups. They do team and training. They raise tons of money for these national organizations. That's great, but they're not Sonoma residents, and we're the ones that have to sit here and put up with it. And it's our plaza that ends up having the additional strain on it. So, in asking, I feel like I have not gotten a satisfactory answer to my questions. I'm not convinced that the economic impact is actually that good for Sonoma, particularly this weekend next year. I'm sure those hotel rooms are going to be full either way. And going back to the special event policy, where we require for-profit events to give a little piece of the money that they're making to our local, has to be a Sonoma Valley nonprofit, and that's just to use the plaza. So you would think to use the streets, then they need to be offering something even better. But right now we haven't even hit the mark for our special events policy. So I find the benefit lacking. The event's been going on long enough. Last year was kind of a disaster. Apparently it's all the fault of one volunteer, but it's like every year everyone keeps thinking, okay, maybe next year's not going to be so bad, but last year was bad. And I think that the time has come to decide that this event's just way too big for our tiny city. And apparently other cities, it's easier to get these things through, but maybe they're not as small as we are. This is a huge impact for this little city, and it really affects people's lives. And in looking at the totality of the summer and the experience that we have, we have to pick and choose the events we have, and the ones that get to stay are the ones that actually benefit us, and the ones that maybe don't have a place here are the ones that have very little connect to, benefiting our residents. So I will be not voting to support this street closure today.
Okay. And Councilmember
I
Evans.
just want to add that with the street closures, I remember last year trying to work my way across town, not necessarily remembering that the event was going on that morning, but people at 10:30 were taking off their orange vest and hanging them on the rack and walking away, and then there were still people walking up the highway. I brought that up at the last council meeting, and some of the folks that aren't quite runners but are participating that linger, and I think they were still walking up way past 11 o'clock, if I remember right. But, I just think when we talk about what funding, so our Rotary Club did a little event, happened to be at Hannah Boys Center recently, and, we did Hannah gives us a great price out there. I don't remember what the exact number is, but we were able to give $80,000 to the Carol Downing Maker Lab at Altamira High School, or Altamira Junior High. And then we raised another, I think the total was about $175,000 or $180,000. And that was just a small, intimate group of 250 people. And I know there's other groups that raise, Kiwanis and other people that raise significant funds here and that have very low impact on the plaza, the red and white ball, so on. That's, a lot of people think that's too big for the plaza. I happen to support that and enjoy that event. But, 100% of the dough, Native Sons, when they do their events, 100% of the money comes back. Vintage Festival, that's all volunteer. 100% comes right back to the community. So, I just think that, I happen to agree. I won't be supporting the street closures as well. But I just think it's time we have to start thinking about the multitude of events that we have going on. I'm not concerned that we're not going to fill hotel rooms. You know, maybe the economy goes south and we'll be begging this event to be back here. But, you know, at this point, I can't support it.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Well, I remember last year, and I think the big flood was in 2006 here, I can't remember. And we couldn't get out of in the neighborhood. I can't remember what year that flood was. But I've heard this evening that it's going to be corrected, that they're going to have someone to handle the traffic and I guess design paths for everyone to be able to pass through far more, and it's really in consideration of the residents. So there's a cost to that, I would imagine, and so that's done for the residents. I think the difference here between Native Sons and Red and White and all the other things that go on is these are national charities that come in. I think you're talking about, is it Crohn's and other charities that come in?
Crohn's and colitis.
Yeah, and so those are national charities, which doesn't make them any less honorable. And so I think it's a good cause. As a person who has been responsible for big events, I don't like the rules to change at the last minute. And I agree. I've been talking about residents versus tourism. I think Johnny and I sit down all the time trying to tie our tourists to the residents and any changes. And I think that's going to be probably amplified this year. And for whatever reason, maybe it's campaign stuff, but it's reality. And I think it's very important for us to actually focus on those things. So as I said, I'm uncomfortable changing rules. And if there's a way for, I don't think we can answer the money issue this time. I don't think that's, because I think you've probably had contracts already in the works, I assume. I think what feels unfortunate to me is contracting for services with nonprofits, which is a good and honorable thing, but perhaps it doesn't sit well with a couple of council members. I understand why you would do that. It still benefits the nonprofit. So I think that those are some things that there's a shortcoming in this. But as I said, as an event person, I don't like changing rules in the end. And if we're just talking about street closures, possibly there's something else with the traffic person that has a study. Possibly that would be more amenable to our two council members. But I can't answer that. Thank you.
Okay.
So I don't necessarily,
Councilmember Edwards.
I don't have an issue with contracting services and so on, but when we get to the end of the race, I think the race is probably won at a certain time, like an hour before people continue to cross. And maybe some of these racers just need to stop and wait for traffic, and there needs to be some kind of traffic opportunity. So I'd be open to that.
Well, I'm happy about that. And the other thing, I guess, just give me a microphone, that's all you have to do. And the other thing with CSEC, you know, some of the things that are discussed here, I didn't get information on that. And maybe I mean, I've read a lot this weekend, but I don't remember getting that feedback. And, so I'm glad to hear what you said. Thank you so much.
Okay. And Councilmember Cook.
Well, I've been studying this. I've been on the council for 4 years, and this has come to the council. And Councilmember Hunley is right. This has been one that we have looked at. What are the benefits? And what else is true is the balance has tipped in Sonoma. We've talked about it, and 8,000 people coming to our plaza doubles this town. And I know last year, I don't know what happened, but it was not good. I got a lot of complaints about this event. I will not be supporting this event tonight. I believe that we need to focus, possibly do a reset in Sonoma and take a look at the use of the plaza and what is local and what is not local. As far as promoting Sonoma, I've always said that I'd rather have the arrow going the other way right now, the Sonoma to Napa. It would be great to have the fairgrounds in Napa could accommodate this. But, over promoting something is a risk also. So I will not be supporting this tonight.
Well, it seems to me that we already have a direction that three parties here are leaning towards not supporting the street closures, okay, which is the item that's before us this evening. I think we still should have a motion, City Attorney, we should still have a motion, and we should go in with the vote itself. My reflections on this is that this is the plaza use policy. We have the larger event section of the policy itself. This went through Community Services and Environment Commission. They approved all portions of this other than, the street closures, which was not their parameter. There has been a lot of discussion here. For me, I know that we had talked of putting the special events policy on an agenda item for City Council. We did not do that prior to this approval. I myself feel that that this is something that we have a policy in which we're trying to orchestrate, and we're not getting the results according to what it is that we now have by popular public opinion. So we have had many discussions on this here, but we have not really heard that public events policy go before the Community Services and Environment Commission for revision, and we have not heard it actually come before us here in this council chambers. So 2 years ago, when that was updated, we had many discussions. This particular event was highlighted in that particular discussion. I myself do not know the parameters of what the proceeds are that are going back to benefit the community. I know that these are road closures for approximately 3 hours on a Sunday morning. I know that this is a month in which we have the 4th of July, we have this event, and we also have the city party. We have 3 huge events in the month of July. To me, this could be a factor of it's being staged at a time that is just too populated during main tourist season, and maybe there's a different time. We have tried a different route. We did that several years ago. It was not successful, and it was not as beneficial. There were conditions of approval that were not met. This different route came into play, and then that was not successful for the event either. We have tried this many different ways. Coming before us tonight, there's obviously not going to be approval for the road closure. To be approved for the race. So my question is, just for staff at this point, is if the road closures are not approved, is the event still approved for other purposes because of the Community Services and Environment Commission? Or do we need to have a motion that says you're not approving the event and the road closures as well?
Yeah. Well, basically, it is a race, so if the road closures don't take place, there essentially is no event.
Right, but we have had alternate routes before. I'm not sure whether you're saying, would another route be, proposed or something like that? Would we be changing it as well? We have had that done before.
That issue is not before the council tonight. There's no alternative road proposal, no alternate route proposed. This is up or down tonight. So if the council decides not to authorize the road closures, this event will not take place.
Okay, thank you. All right, then I would be looking to entertain a motion.
I'm sorry, could I
We
just?
could still have further discussion
All right,
after the
thank-
motion.
Okay, thanks.
All right?
Can I say something before we get there?
The public comment is ended, so there is no participation.
All right. I would like to make a motion to deny the resolution approving the use of city streets for this event. Is that sufficient, our city attorney?
I think be that deny the application for the use of the city's roads for this event.
Sure, oh, here we go. Deny the application by Destination Races for temporary use of city streets for the Napa to Sonoma Wine Country Half Marathon on Sunday, July 16th, 2017.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second, further discussion. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, my question is, to the city attorney, I have to imagine there are a lot of contracts that have been signed. I can only assume that. So what does that do when contracts are signed? And possibly there shouldn't have been an assumption that this would have been approved. So what does that do to us? What is our liability in that?
I don't think the city has liability for that. There's no guarantee that these road closures were going to be approved, and presumably that information was provided to the folks who signed contracts with the organizer of this event.
Okay, any further discussions that are necessary? Yes, Councilmember Hundley.
My last comment is that I feel the council, the last time we talked about this, had sort of alluded to a bit of skepticism over the use of the streets, and that's why we wanted to see the information, kind of weigh the totality of it. So I was hoping within that time something would materialize. There'd be something good brought to the table today. Perhaps someone contacted me to talk to me, but I don't know if perhaps everyone else was contacted. But there was, I just feel like there hasn't been a willingness to work with the city and truly appreciate what the need is that we're trying to uphold here for our residents. So that's how I think that we ended up where we are today.
May I make another comment?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
And I actually think we have some ownership. This city has ownership in it, because I feel that the rules have changed. And while I agree, I agree that our residents are affected. This is something we've been discussing for a long time, and it really is our fault that we haven't dealt with it earlier. And this is where we are today. And I think we all hands are on this sword, not just the event. All hands are on this sword. It was our failure, the city's failure, and that's unfortunate. And that's why I ask about the issues of liability, of what goes now, what happens to that charity, and possibly if it's denied, possibly there's time to come back and possibly have another, some type of a traffic study that will allay the fears of the majority of this council.
If there isn't any other comment, I'd just like to make a comment before we vote. I really feel that the city needed to review this special events policy. And if there was an urgency, that's what I would like to say right here. If this was so egregious at this point or last year or whatever, I'm voting to more or less, in absentia, because I will probably not be here to actually see this come to fruition. But what I would specifically request is that either this particular organization or any event that is going to require road closure, that there be some sort of provision in your special events policy about that. And if you do not want roads closed or specific roads closed, I think we need to disclose that. And I think a process of having Community Services and Environment approve a pre or post application definitely says that there's an issue with this, and that's when we need to be getting involved. And so I just want to state that I do not feel this is going to pass for the road closures. However, I don't feel that this feels particularly right to me either, because we have not reviewed that policy or made changes. And the only thing that really gets me even more upset is that if there are other special events that are here that are at risk, these are things that I think should be done sooner than later, because we may have other issues with other events as well. So, with that, roll call vote.
Agramonte,
So I don't understand. I'm voting, could you explain the vote to me?
The motion is to deny the application.
So I say, no. I'm a yes, but I'm embarrassed. I am so embarrassed to be here and to be part of this. I don't think anyone doubts the way I feel about our residents, but I'll tell you, this vote makes me embarrassed. So I'm a yes, no, I'm a no.
You're denying,
Yeah,
you're not, you're saying you're approving the application.
yeah.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Hunley,
Yes.
Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
Mayor Gallion.
And I will be saying a no, because I feel that this is not the appropriate process in which to deny this application. And that's what I would like with my comments. Thank you very much. And we will be moving on to item 7B. Item 7B is discussion, consideration, and possible action on establishing a safe parking program on the police station property, including consideration of memorandum of understanding with Sonoma oversight, overnight for program management. And this will be our planning director.
Thank you, Mayor Gallion, members of the City Council. Since June, the Council has been discussing the concept of establishing a safe parking program. That concept refers to a managed allowance for homeless persons with cars to sleep in their vehicles overnight at a safe location, preferably with access to bathroom facilities. This concept was originally put forward by Sonoma Overnight Support, the local nonprofit organization that manages the city-owned homeless shelter on the police station property. Most recently, over the course of meetings in September and October, a council majority agreed on a basic concept, that being to direct staff to develop a proposal for establishing on a trial basis a safe parking program on the police station property, limited to 5 spaces and operated in conjunction with the homeless shelter. And specifically, staff was directed to do 2 things. First, to process an application for a temporary use permit for this safe parking program from the Planning Commission. And second, to negotiate an agreement with Overnight Support for the management of the program. Pursuant to this direction, an application for a temporary use permit was made. It was reviewed by the Planning Commission at its meeting of November 8th, at which time the Planning Commission voted 6-1 to approve the temporary use permit subject to conditions, and those conditions were included as part of your materials for this item. In addition, city staff and Sonoma Overnight Support have negotiated a draft memorandum of understanding that would constitute the agreement between the city and Sonoma Overnight Support for the management of the program. And that agreement is subject to the review and approval of the City Council, which is the item, in essence, that's before you tonight. Now, just to provide a few more details on the program, again, it would consist of 5 designated parking spaces adjoining the shelter. Approval would be on a trial basis to test the concept for a 4-month period beginning in December. Program management, including client screening, would be provided by Sonoma Overnight Support. Hours of operation would be from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., with variations as needed to accommodate special events that might occur during the program period. Participating clients would be subject to the following regulations and requirements. First, every driver must have a valid driver's license and current registration. Vehicles must be in working order. Each vehicle shall only be occupied by designated participants and approved and registered household members. The use of alcohol and illicit drugs would be prohibited. Random drug and alcohol tests would be performed by Sonoma Overnight Support. Cooking and food preparation would be prohibited. Sonoma Overnight Support would be required to keep the area in a clean and orderly condition. Loitering would be prohibited. Participants in their vehicles would be required to leave the area by 7 a.m., and loud music and other noise disturbances would be prohibited. These rules would be enforced by a program monitor provided by Sonoma Overnight Support, and failure to follow the rules would result in immediate expulsion from the program. In terms of the Planning Commission review, just to talk about that a little bit more, their main concern about the program and staff's main concern, and I'm sure a primary concern of the council's, has been compatibility with neighboring uses, including the Field of Dreams in nearby residents. And so the points that we just reviewed in terms of the program requirements are all intended to assure as best as we possibly can that this program is managed in an appropriate way that addresses the concerns that have been expressed by nearby residents. So we're hopeful that a well-managed program that adheres to these conditions will not cause issues for the neighbors. And again, the Planning Commission vote ultimately was 6-1 in that regard to test the program on this trial basis. Now, the use permit itself, again, issued as a temporary use permit, was an action that was taken by the Planning Commission. What's before the council tonight is actually the draft memorandum of understanding, and that sets forth not only the different conditions I just mentioned, but also insurance requirements and other kind of procedural issues. So that's the action that's in effect before the council tonight, is whether or not to authorize the city manager to execute the memorandum of understanding subject to any revisions that may be deemed necessary by the council. We feel that we've been able to work with Sonoma Overnight Support to develop a good agreement, and our recommendation is to approve the MOU. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Council members, questions? David, I had met earlier with the city manager, and one of the things that I saw referenced in here were attachments, I think it's A and B. One referred to the good neighbor policy, and the other one referred to possible location of where the sanitation facilities were. Can you just go a little bit more into that?
Well, the sanitation facilities would be located behind the shelter. They'd be locked when the program was not in use, and they'd be available only to program participants. And we'll have an exhibit that delineates exactly where that facility is going to be.
Will it be lighted? That's one of the concerns that I have.
Well, I think we can verify that with SOS, but my understanding is that, yes, it would be illuminated.
Right, just for visibility
Right,
and safety.
right. And the good neighbor policy is a specific set of rules that SOS would outline in terms of just making sure that program participants are orderly and respectful in terms of their surroundings and neighbors. And that would be subject to the review and approval of the city manager.
Right.
So you're authorizing the city manager to execute the MOU, but certain exhibits such as the program, the delineation of the program area are to be developed.
Okay, thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem?
I do have a couple of questions. Thank you so much, Carol, for going through this with me. I think I'm going to be an attorney soon going through all this. But page 189, A and M, you know, not that I ever get stopped for traffic infractions, but I know they always ask for driver's license, registration, and insurance. Could I ask why this has been separated from each other? There's driver's license, registration in A, and then M has insurance for the car. Is there a reason why that was separated?
Not a good reason.
Oh. I passed the bar.
I can offer why they were separated. When the first draft came to our office, it did not include insurance as a requirement for each of the people using the space. So I added that as one of the items that had to be provided at the end of that long list. That's why they got separated.
So it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't mean anything, really. It still stands. Okay, thanks. So my other, I guess, page 190, Carol and I discussed this, 8A, with respect to people that are using this facility and in the evening, they have to leave at 7 a.m. So even though they may participate in the day program, they still have to move their cars from this parking places and do their, maybe take a shower, maybe eat a breakfast, do their laundry. Is that how I understand?
That's right, but the vehicle must leave first, and it can't come back during the day.
Okay, but they can park somewhere else
Right.
on the parking lot?
Yeah, but not in those designated spaces, and they would have to leave by 7 a.m.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other further questions on this? All right, with that, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Please remember to state your name and your address.
Hi, my name is Fred Allebach at 19550 8th Street East. And as regards to the homeless people as compared to fine, upstanding citizens on the plaza, I took a walk around the plaza last night, and if I made a map that was similar to what's in the packet, to the kind of intoxicated behavior that I saw on the plaza last night, it would probably be pretty interesting, because in each block there was people who were drunk, falling down drunk, yelling, and then some people got in a big truck and drove off with no lights on. And other people were going around the plaza yelling out of their car at other people, and other people were yelling back at them. So it seems to me that with that you don't want these guys to have any drugs or alcohol, or there be orderly behavior over there. And yet in the center of our town, there's people who are just intoxicated at night, just incredibly. So it seems to me to be kind of an ironic situation that, you're trying to help out some people and you put all these conditions on them, but yet the core of town is not really that great of an example of fine, upstanding behavior. So I just thought I'd point that out.
Thank you very much.
Larry Barnett, 5th Street East. Well, I'm here in support once again of this particular project. Initially, I felt that the council could choose to not send this to the Planning Commission, and that was my recommendation. But I went to that Planning Commission meeting that the city staff had recommended, and actually I revised my view, and I decided that actually that was a very worthwhile thing to do, because the Planning Commission looked at this and asked a lot of interesting questions, and the application was, I think, modified accordingly. So I do think in retrospect that was a positive thing to do. I'm very pleased that at the prospect of this being approved. I think it's gone through the kind of examination that something like this should go through. And I would just hasten to remind the council that this is a test, and there's going to be an evaluation of it. And based on that evaluation, it'll either become something that the city can continue to support, or decide that it's inappropriate for this location and discontinue it. Finally, just in accordance with my comments at a previous meeting before you, should you approve this tonight, I have brought a check for $2,000 to fund the program for the 3 months, roughly, that it's going to take place. And I will give this to Kathy as soon as you've committed your vote. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry.
Good evening, council members. My name is Kathy King. I'm the Executive Director of Sonoma Overnight Support. I live in Moon Valley Mobile Home. I'm here one last time, I hope, and I think you hope so too, that I've been coming to the city council meetings for the last 6 months to advocate for a safe parking pilot program that SOS wants to start on behalf of the homeless of Sonoma that want to feel protected while they sleep in their cars. I want to assure you that the professional staff of SOS will do everything in our power to make sure that the memorandum of understanding is followed and the rules and the regulations that have been put into place will be carried out. I want to thank the city staff and I want to thank the council for working with us and with our board members to hammer out what we feel is a really good memorandum of understanding. We want to make sure that the homeless that are in their cars feel safe, but we also want to make sure that the neighbors feel safe while people are in their cars. We've received 2 letters from the neighbors supporting the project, and I hope you got copies of those. And we want to make sure that we can continue this test to make sure if we need to tweak it here and there, we do so. So we have looked into it and made sure that it is as tight and as well run as possible, and we hope to carry it out as need be. So thank you very much for hammering this out, the city staff, and thank you for the city council for making sure that we jump through the hoops that were necessary, and now we hope to see the finish line. So thank you again.
Thank you, Kathy.
First name is Pather, last name is Dalton, 460 LaKenta Lane in the city. A couple of quick, also president of Sonoma Valley Ministerial Association. A thank you to the City Council for, first of all, considering this twice, bringing a consciousness to the broader community of this need. Also, by the way, teaching faith communities as well to be more aware, because the broader community, in my humble opinion, teaches faith communities, as faith communities serves and raises awareness to the broader communities, where it's a reciprocal kind of relationship. So we appreciate you doing this. Kathy did address the Sonoma Valley Ministerial Association. There are interested people, but they also have committees to go through, and seeing the example of the city fathers moving forward in this beautiful communal service in this day and time is fabulous. And I have no doubt that in the new year, 2017, into the new year, in the first couple of months, that there will be some faith communities that will be absolutely interested in also supporting the needs of more people than the 5 or 6 that are receiving it. So again, on behalf of the Sonoma Valley Ministerial Association, thank you all for considering this, and I have no doubt that it will be a wonderful, positive vote tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak on this issue? I'll bring it back to council. I do have one question before we go further, and that was from our police chief, and that was addressing what he felt was some of the issues that were brought up by the neighbors. And I don't know that I saw that addressed in this report.
Could you be more specific, please?
Just that because of the map that was put together there, and it, may just be me going through there, was this resolved with these incidences and, some of the comments about not having the investment of, the police behind if things were reported stolen?
Sure.
Those were things that were concerns of mine from the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. I've spoken both with the police chief and also with Sergeant Craver about that map, and in essence, we feel that it is most likely that those incidents arise, to the extent that they're related at all, from clients associated with the day services. And so on a separate track, planning staff and the police department will be working with SOS to try to look at that program and look at potential modifications to the day use program to address those issues. But since it's not directly related to the safe parking program, in which the clients are going to be screened and monitored, it's not addressed in this MOU.
Thank you very much. Yes. Yes, Chief, if you wish to speak, I'd be willing to hear that.
Good evening, members of the council. Yes, just to kind of reiterate a couple things. So your concerns from last meeting were forwarded to me, and I believe I responded to Carol, and she, I hope, forwarded it to you. It is not a day that doesn't go by that we don't address homeless in some, way or, form. So There are many events that go on that probably go unreported. Everyone that gets called into us, we do respond to. They are handled in a variety of different ways. Generally, enforcement is the least likely outcome because it's a segment of the population that we just don't have a really good answer for. So we have been working with SOS and the Haven and certainly with Catholic Charities to try to figure out better services. So it has become such a big problem for us in terms of not just Sonoma, but I think in law enforcement in general over the last year. We've actually developed, as I mentioned in my memo, a completely different disposition code so we can begin to track the impact of homeless-related incidents on us and the impact it has on our services. We're still tweaking the program, but I think last time I checked, in the first month and a half we had like 41 incidents just in the city of Sonoma that we were addressing. Deputies go down almost every other day down to the creeks to walk the creek to see if people are down there. They get through Montini. I have altered my afternoon running path to go up into the hills a little bit more frequently to see what's going on up there. But it's certainly something that your police department is well aware of. We're partnering with the city, we're partnering with our nonprofits to see what we can do to address the problem as humanely and as dignified as we can. There'll be some bumps in the road, certainly. Kathy's been committed to working with us. She'll be providing us with information. And so I think we're good to give this a shot.
Well, that's very heartening. Did anyone else have questions?
I just have a question.
Sure.
The reporting, it seemed there were some discussions about reporting.
Mhm.
So CAD, is that the overall or?
Yeah, so I think there's a misnomer. So CAD is a computer-aided dispatch. So when somebody calls, it gets logged into our computer-aided dispatch center, and a deputy will respond to it, and he or she, when they clear that call, will dispo it out a certain way, contacted, resolved, report taken, a variety of things. They can also put some notes in them. Most of them do. The deputies are well aware of the people who are in the homeless community, so to speak. We don't write reports every single time, and I'm not sure that the general public understands the time commitment it requires to write a report. And then if we're not taking any enforcement action, which is probably contrary to good public policy, then a report is really, kind of a waste of resources in terms of just, sitting down and writing something. We'd rather have the guys on the street work on traffic issues instead or other issues. And so it doesn't mean that it's not necessarily reported. It's just not in a crime report. It's written in a CAD document.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Councilmember
Gary.
Edwards.
Chief Sackett, so with this MOU, so how do we verify? In other words, are there going to be random checks of the records?
So I think the MOU says every week they will provide us with a list of all the participants and their license plates and so on and so forth. They will check that also against the Megan's Law database. We will be checking it against our databases to make sure that the people that are appropriate that are there and they don't have any outstanding issues that we might be interested in. And so the staff will be, our staff, nighttime staff will be monitoring it as best as possible without hovering so much that people feel that they're just under such scrutiny that they're not going to be enjoying. So it's that delicate balance. We are going to continue to track homeless-related incidences throughout the entire city to see if we're having an increase in conjunction with the program. I'm not sure we can tie the two together. It's a little bit of a challenge. I think the concern that I have, which I've voiced before, is potentially having the program be so popular, it overwhelms, and 5 spaces can fill up fairly quickly. And so cars 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are going to find a place to go. And to quote unquote move them out of the community is going to be a challenge. And so I think our nighttime staff will be really aware about who's sleeping in cars in and around other parking lots and dark alleys and dark corners of Sonoma. And we'll try to figure out the best way to resolve that issue.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, council members, at this point, are there any actions or comment? Councilmember Hundley.
I just want to say thank you to Chief Sackett, to our planning department. I've definitely gotten a lot of compliments from your communication over the last couple months and transparency. And it's nice to hear that some of the neighbors are getting behind this. I understand that some are still skeptical, and that's understandable. I know it feels different when it's your own home that's sort of near something like this, but I'm really encouraged by the way that everyone's worked together. And I mean, my favorite part of this whole process, other than we've gotten to this point, is just that I feel like the conversation about homelessness in the community has been elevated, and I think that next year there are a lot more things that we can start doing, that we can start talking to the county about. So this is just a tiny little piece in the beginning, and we'll see how the winter goes. I'm feeling optimistic, but we'll assess and see how it goes. So I will be still supporting this tonight, and I'm thankful for everyone that's been involved in the process.
Okay, that's great. And Councilmember Cook.
Probably the most, probably a lot of people won't like being in this room after they hear what I say. Never have I been against homelessness, and I was reminded over this weekend by hearing fix a problem and don't do the Band-Aid. And I really have said this from the beginning, that I really do believe that this is not the right spot because it's not big enough. What I want to do in the next 4 years is I want to try to fix the homeless problem here in Sonoma, because I worry about car 6, 7, and 8. I realize this is a pilot program. I'm going to, support the city as far as going through this. I hope it's successful. I won't be there and saying, I told you so. And like Councilmember Hundley did say, this has brought awareness, and it's brought awareness to a lot of people. It's been in the newspaper. But we have a major homeless problem, and this is just a Band-Aid. I'm hoping that if this fails, it's not a failure for us to act and find some other venue. I'm pretty much calling the county, the state, to get with our local officials, and let's get something. The faith-based organizations that are in this room that I see, get together. Let's figure this out. We talked, since this has started, we talked about Pythian, some government places that we have. And if that is the will of the people, let's get behind this and let's find these parking spots that have 50 to 100 spots. Because I've heard the number 18, heard the number 27, through this last, 3 or 4 months we've been discussing this. I went through an election with this on my back, and I never changed my vote. I was not going to change my vote for an election because I really believe that this is not the right spot, and we need to look at how we can fix this problem. We're going to overburden SOS, and I'm hoping that that does not happen. So I'm here. If there's problems, don't feel that you can't speak to me about it, because I am for the homeless, and I'm definitely for the homeless shelter, and I'd like to see a bigger homeless shelter in Sonoma or Sonoma Valley.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Edwards.
So I'm going to throw a couple things out. I was just visited one of my clients down in LA last week, and his building, it's almost a square block, and it just happens to be in the Skid Row area of downtown LA, and he's done everything he can to improve it. But what he has is there ends up being tents all around his property, and then they have razor wire over the fence and all that kind of stuff. But it's not really comical, but what's interesting is that he has to go out and hose off his sidewalks, and then he gets cited by the city of Los Angeles for using water. But you can actually go sleep and put couches and do all kinds of things around his building. And I admire Councilmember Cook about fixing the homeless problem in 4 years, but they haven't done it in Los Angeles for probably 100 years, and it's always going to be an issue. Recently, I think it was weekend before last, Rotary Club got together with some of Kathy's guest at SOS, and we cleaned up leaves and raked leaves and pulled weeds and did all kinds of things. And we actually provided the funds to SOS from Rotary to pay those folks or give them some kind of little stipend. And it was really a great project. We had 3 folks that came out, and it was really a great thing because the best part about it was that the Rotarians that were there didn't all realize that we had homeless people working with us. And so that's kind of a nice thing, is that my goal was to get people together so our homeless population would see that we actually do care and we're trying to do things. But the sweet part about it was is that the Rotarians didn't necessarily know that the people that were helping us were homeless. So I'm going to support the MOU because I'm pretty sure we have a 3-2 position from before, as we did. But what I want to see is that I think that Sonoma Overnight Shelter needs to get back to its core of what you're doing. I mean, I think it's great, but we can't forget about it was supposed to be an emergency shelter, and we have to not forget that. And when we talked about the funds that you guys have been raising more and more money every year, I think that's great, but I think that your board needs to put together a plan of what you're going to do next. And I think a central location somewhere in the valley is going to be the right answer. I don't think it's right here because it's too small. The building's overused. You just can't run that many people through all the time. And now we're going to end up with basically a porta potty facility out here. I'm concerned with, I'm not sure which council member brought it up, but that people can move from one parking spot to the other. That doesn't set real well with me in the same parking lot. Once you move, you're moved. I think it's really something we have to enforce the rules of this MOU, and as they do with the places I visited in Santa Rosa, they have to leave the property and go about their business, hopefully going and finding work, finding services. I know there's more services coming online in Petaluma and Santa Rosa, et cetera. But I just want to bring back, and I'm not saying it has anything to do with the parking situation, but it was on the radio this morning. There was a county worker in the county council's office that walked into work or came into work on Sunday, and there was a guy in there with a suit on, working, claiming that he was with the county. And this individual said, there's no way that you would wear a suit on a Sunday coming to work, so she called 911. And it turned out to be a homeless guy who put on a suit, nice looking suit, and went through all the offices at county council. I see a lot of creativity in that particular individual, but I'm concerned that we're still going to have the issues. I'm very curious to see what Chief Sackett comes back with as the numbers change, because we're producing basically a pretty nice situation here with the Haven and with the parking. I just don't want to see that good thing turn into something that it's not intended to be. And I'm going to continue to work with Jenny Lynn Holmes. Met with her at the Habitat for Humanity meeting, and Councilmember Hunley and I attended this week, where Habitat is looking to build 600 homes over the next 6 years. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And we both made contributions to that, and we're going to continue to, we may disagree on certain issues, but that's one thing I think we're in unison, our entire council. So I'm not sure which direction, until I hear from the rest of the council members, but I'm going to support the MOU, but if it fails, then I'm not going to support, it's going to have to go. And I'm hoping that you'll do everything you can possibly do to make sure that it works. And that's why I asked, how are we going to verify this? Because if you get people that are coming in that don't have their license and so on, it just can't be where you say, okay, well, we're going to let you off the hook. There has to be some kind of verification for me. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte.
So I just wanted to clarify something, and maybe I didn't explain this very well, when I would discuss this with Carol. The safe parking program states that you have to leave the parking space at 7 a.m. But the reason I said, and then you move the car, the reason people move the car to another location out of that program area is because they use showers, they wash clothes, and they're fed in the morning. So that's why I said that. Has nothing to do with the program. Because, yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with the program, moving around in spaces, and that's the way I understand it. So unless there are further questions or comments, I would like to make a motion to establish a safe parking program on the police station property, including consideration of a memorandum of understanding with Sonoma Overnight Support for program management.
And are you authorizing the city manager to sign that memorandum?
Yes.
So you have to state that.
And I'm authorizing the city manager to sign that memorandum of understanding.
And I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion?
I have one more statement I'd like to make. I am very disappointed in Catholic Charities. That's all I can say. Because they stepped up very clearly, and now I don't know what they're doing. Thank you.
I, for one, would just like to state before we go for the vote that I think this memorandum of understanding is something that we can all work with here in Sonoma. I think this is a pilot program, as I have always felt it should be at this particular point. I am looking for possible adoption by many of the faith community to also be looking for spaces that would be in an appropriate amount for what they feel they could sustain on their properties. And whether I'm here on council or whether here in community, I will always be looking for another day center extension where we can be servicing more of the people who actually don't have the ability to either get to our facilities or, get to be processed through rapid rehousing and more of the county services than can be done at the SOS, which does an incredible job right now, but they need help. And I'm the first one to say that I think it needs to be on a countywide basis as well as a city participation. And for that, I would love to see an alternate location that's established. So this is only the beginning for me. We have until March 31st. Hopefully we can get more partners on board and we can be talking about this as a possible year-round program that would exist in the future at a possible other location. So to me, we need to be looking for more, but this is where we're at right now. So with that, can we have the vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte.
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards.
Aye.
Councilmember Hunley.
Aye.
Councilmember Cook.
No.
Mayor Gallion.
Aye. So with that, we have authorized the city manager to execute the MOU for the safe parking program. And the vote was 4-1 dissenting. Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Well, thank you all. Now we've had our little break here. We're ready to hit our next few items on the agenda, but we're at item 7C for those of you who are following along on the agenda. And this is consideration, discussion, and possible action on the approval of a 25-year lease for the Sebastiani Theater and related documents. And I believe our city attorney, Jeff Walter, will go ahead and take care of this.
Thank you, Mayor. In 1986, the city entered into a 25-year lease for the Sebastiani Theater, and during that time, either the city or the former Community Development Agency rented the theater for $3,000 a month. It subleased the theater to Roger Roten. Always get you. Sorry about that, Roger. You didn't. All right, forget it. Okay, I'll just call you Roger. Roger was the sublessee, and that lease expired in 2011. And since that time, various parties, including the city, have been working with the owner of the property to develop a long-term solution to the use of the Sebastiani Theater. And those negotiations have borne fruit, and a series of documents now have been prepared and approved by the owner of the building. At least the city staff has approved of them, and we're proposing that they be approved tonight, as well as the Sebastiani Theater Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that was created in 2007, has a board of directors and has been actively promoting events and other activities at the theater, and is seriously interested in essentially becoming the overseer of the operations of the theater for many years to come. The lease documents that are before you commit the foundation to fundraising for a period of 2 years from the beginning of the lease. And the lease currently is contemplated to begin on December 1 of this year. And for 2 years, the foundation will fundraise in an effort to generate the monies necessary to bring the theater into ADA compliance. There are some bathroom and other issues that still linger and need to be addressed, and the foundation is proposing to do all that work and has asked the city to contribute 50% of those costs up to $300,000. And at the city manager's level, that commitment was supported and is coming to you tonight in the way of a recommendation. There are 4 documents before you tonight. One is a lease document. It has an addendum. That's the second document. There's a sublease between the city and the foundation, under which the foundation steps into the shoes of the city and acts as though it were the lessee under the master lease with the owner of the building. And there is a reimbursement and indemnification agreement between the city and the foundation that lays out the financial arrangement between the two in terms of sharing of costs. And under that arrangement, the city is agreeing to pay 1/2 of the monthly rents, 1/2 of the property taxes, 1/2 of the insurance costs incurred by the foundation, and as I mentioned before, 1/2 of the ADA improvements up to $300,000. Attached to the staff report are financial analysis documents that have been prepared by the city manager, giving a description of the potential kind of costs that these lease documents entail. They're premised on a 2% cost inflator every year, not only for the rent, which is actually built into the lease, but also for the real property taxes and insurance. Those are suppositions, but they're the best that we can do in terms of trying to predict 25 and 50 years into the future. The final document that's before you tonight is a right of first refusal agreement. This is a 3-way agreement between the city, the foundation, and the owner of the Sebastiani Theater building, under which the owner has agreed that if it ever receives an offer to lease other portions of this building, as you know, the Sebastiani Theater is just one of at least 3 uses, the theater, the bar, and the real estate office. It's all one ownership, one structure, if you will. And there was an interest on the part of the foundation to have an opportunity, if other spaces become available, to basically step in and agree to assume the obligations of an offer made by a third party to take over the lease, or to step in and purchase the building if it's up for sale and the owners receive an offer from a third party. The owner was unwilling to grant the right of first refusal on a lease basis to the foundation, but gave that to the city, but agrees that if the city were to take advantage of such an opportunity and lease, let's assume the bar owner decides not to continue with the lease. In that instance then, and a new lessee proposes to lease that portion of the structure, the owner would have to bring that offer to the city first, and the city would have 7 days to decide whether or not to step in and take over that lease itself. If it did that, the owner has agreed that the city then could sublease that additional space to the foundation. With respect to a purchase proposal by a third party, the owner has granted the foundation 7 days to step in and take over that purchase offer, and the city 14 days. It's a very short period of time. If both the foundation and the city decided to accept this offer and step into the offeror's shoes, then the foundation would trump the city, and the foundation would be given the right to buy the building, not the city. Those are the basic salient points of these documents. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you. Council members?
I just have one quick question.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem
Thank
Agramonte.
you. So when we refer to other documents, that is, I'm looking here, the sublease, that's one of them?
Yes. They are listed on the, except for the right of first, yes, it's there too. They're listed on the
recommended
face
council?
sheet, they're listed on the face sheet of the agenda item summary.
Right, so
But-
by approving the MOU, those would be the additional documents?
They would be, but there's a resolution in the package that starts at page 228.
Right, I saw that.
And if there's a motion to approve all of these documents, all you need to do is approve that resolution. And it, by its own terms, approves all the necessary documents.
Okay, that's how I understood it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, any other questions? Let's go out to the public.
Roger Rotten here. Name is Roger Roten. I live at 1021 Central Avenue in Sonoma, and I have leased and operated a theater for the past 25 years. And actually, this time I would, on behalf of my wife and myself, would like to thank the city of Sonoma and all the councilmen and women, both past and present, for all their support. Without that, we would not be open today. And without all the support of this wonderful community that loves the theater, realizes that it is truly a treasure, and it's something that we do need to maintain and keep for our future generations, and for everybody to enjoy and to be able to have shared experiences and just even it's just its presence. So it's such a wonderful place, and so I've been honored to be its keeper here for the last 25 years, but now it's time for a new era, and I'm really excited about this. We're all really excited about this because without a long-term lease, you can't do anything. You can't do any fundraising, and so that's really, really important. So I just would like to say that because the Sebastian Theater Foundation is now taking over the lease, and it'll open the doors to an exciting, long, and new future. We'll be able to embark on a long overdue fundraising effort. It's been, we haven't even had a lease in the last 5 years, and so so this will help the foundation fulfill its mission and goals, which is dedicated to preserving, enhancing, and maintaining this Sonoma's historical and treasured theater. So it's been a lot of work. This has been going on for some time now. And this board of directors and the foundation have worked diligently toward trying to put together a lease, because it's been very hard. And I'd like just to acknowledge the board members, if I could. They're in the audience, and I'd like to have Daryl Bellick stand up, or he's the president. And we have Nadine Yenning, which she is the treasurer. And we have Rosemary Schmidt. Okay, you're not going to stand up. And Joyce Maltavon, and so we have Jocelyn Vick, which is stand up, And so these are all people that are on the board that work so hard. This theater couldn't be here without the community support. That's a fact right there. So I know that I appreciate all the support that I've received, and I know that the board feels the same way. And in putting this together, I make a special thank you to Ryan Snow here. He volunteered all of his time putting together and negotiating, and I think he did a great job, and it was a great service to the community. And so I think he deserves a special thank you. And Michael Woods, I'd like to thank him too, because he did a great job too. And so I'm not going to go on for a long time, but I can tell you this, that we're getting ready to move forward. Once we can get active in our fundraising, of course, one of the very first things we have to do is tackle the ADA situation and make the improvements necessary for that. But not only for that, we want to improve the theater from top to bottom, and we want to be able to bring new and exciting programming to the theater. And we do feel it strongly how much a part of the community it is, and we want to make it available for all different aspects of the community. We think that's really important. And so we're just really excited, and we really thank the staff that has been great. They have worked really, really hard trying to put this together. So I'd like another special thanks to the City of Sonoma staff. So anyway, we thank you. And I think the people of Sonoma thank you too, because it's something that we all love, and we want to see it continue on. So thank you very much, and we'll see how it goes. No.
Thank you very much, Roger. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time?
Good evening, Council. Good evening, staff. My name is Daryl Belak. I'm the president of the Sebastiani Theater Foundation. I'm a little hunched over tonight. 11 days ago, I was in the hospital in surgery for 4 hours on my back, and I felt tonight was one of the most important nights to me, and tonight was the first night I've left the house because of this meeting. That I've been a businessman, I've been a husband, and I am a husband and a father. There are, any man thinks, as you get older, like myself, of what his legacy is going to be. Well, there are, on one hand, if you can count 5 important things in your life that are meaningful, that's special. And most people probably cannot do that. The first item that was very special in my life was meeting my wife, Susan. Okay, we've been married 39 years ago, and she gives me the reason every day to take my first breath of air. Susan is the person that decorates the Sebastiani Theater every year for Halloween, Christmas, and other major events. She spends literally hours and hours. The second thing that was a major event in my life was having my children, my grandchildren. And then the fourth thing that was very, very special was when my oldest grandson was 5 years old, and he became involved with the Sebastiani Theater, and Susan and I met Roger and Diana Roden. They have been tremendous inspirations to us for everything that they have done within the community. And the fifth thing that is a major, major landmark in my life is being here tonight, being able to have, after 5 years of very hard work, working with the city, the staff, Ryan, Michael, and Roger and Diana, to have been able to put together a lease that is basically guaranteeing the community 50 years of continued tradition moving forward. Long after I'm gone, this theater is going to be around for our community. One last thing. Roger mentioned events and movies and so forth. One of the most important things about the Sebastiani Theater is what Roger and Diana have made available for the children of Sonoma. That I did a quick count, and my estimate was that it's been over 10,000 children that have performed, danced, and sung on the stage of the Sebastiani Theater. I've had children come back as adults, bringing their children in and saying, we have to look around the theater. We want to share with our family what we grew up to. What Roger and Diana have taught children is respect, compassion, humility. They've taught them to be good listeners, to be respectful, to be gracious. and he's taught them how to be leaders. And these children are the future of our society, the future of Sonoma. They're going to come back to be the leadership. So I just want to thank the city for working so closely with the foundation. We are excited. We are going to do some unbelievable things with the theater that you're going to be very, very proud. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darrell. Anyone else wishing to speak?
I have my tall wheelchair now, so I can speak. I'm Jeannie Allen, 466 Patton Street. I've lived in Sonoma for 16 years, and for 16 years I've been going to the Sebastiani Theater for movies and for special events. And for 16 years, I have not been able to go to the bathroom at the Sebastiani Theater. So I am so thrilled that finally we're going to get this lease for 25 years, that we can have a long-term view to what the Sebastiani Theater means to this community, and that people in wheelchairs and scooters and with other disabilities will finally, after the movie and after eating their popcorn and drinking their Coke, will be able to go to the bathroom. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Of course, I have to wait for another 4 years, so that's a little disappointing, but I'll hold it, honest, for the next 4 years. If I've held it for 16, I can hold it for another 4. So what I would like to propose is the wording in the lease that's specific to the restrooms and the seating and the stage. The lease states that the leasee shall be responsible to bring the premises in compliance with the current Americans with Disability Act. And backing that up is Exhibit A, which shows the little map, the proposed ADA unisex bathroom addition. But what I didn't see was anything about a ramp or a permanent lift to provide access to the stage for individuals with disabilities. So hopefully that's already been considered, but if we're bringing it up to ADA compliance, the stage needs to be accessible as well. As far as seating, I know that I've used the seats, so I know that the theater does have several accessible seats with companion seats. And I looked up the ADA code today. Wow, that was exciting. And 1% of the seating must be wheelchair seating locations next to companion seats. So I'm not sure how many seats the Sebastiani Theater has, but it may already be in compliance to that. What I don't think that the theater has is the other seating requirement is that 1% of the seating must be aisle seats with no armrest or aisle seats that have a removable or folding armrest. So there may need to be some seating ADA upgrades. And why I call this out specifically is that in the past, the Sebastiani has made some ADA improvements, but they were not complete because we don't have the accessible bathrooms. But there is the nice ramp to get in, there is accessible seating. But with this lease and these improvements, I would hope that the Sebastiani Theater can proudly say that it is truly and fully ADA accessible for the bathrooms, for the seating, and for the stage. The other thing I just wanted to bring up is that in addition to meeting the ADA code, I think it's important, whether it's the theater or any other building, that an actual wheelchair user be involved in the planning and design process. Too often I have found that places that are technically ADA code compliant were not totally practical for someone using a wheelchair or a mobility scooter. So I would like to volunteer my services to be that actual wheelchair user that brings a sense of practicality to the ADA improvements during the planning process. And we mentioned the town square, and I'm not sure if we're going to have ADA I don't go to the town square, so they should have bathrooms too. So I don't know what the situation is there.
Right. Well, we'll discuss that. That is not on the agenda.
On this lease. Okay.
Okay.
May I address a couple of her?
No. Sorry. No.
Oh, okay.
No. Once in public comment, and that's it.
Everything
Okay.
will be done.
Yeah.
Going to get worn out tonight. The previous speaker talked about a legacy, and as a former city council member, I can tell you that there's not that many things that in the 12 years I sat up where you sit that I felt were the memory that people will have of me, but will become memories that they have about this community. Probably the most emblematic one of those was the acquisition of the Montini Preserve. And I used to think about the fact that someone coming to Sonoma 50 years from now would take a look at that and go, wow, can you believe that there's this beautiful open space that isn't developed behind the city of Sonoma? I think this is a comparable situation for you. 50 years is a long time. A right of first refusal on the purchase is quite a remarkable achievement, given my memory of the property owner and how difficult things got sometimes. So this is something I think you'll be able to look back on, and others long after you will consider a remarkable achievement. So I credit the staff and everyone associated with the foundation for putting it together. Personally speaking, I've watched my granddaughter, who's now shortly going to be 9 years old, participate in the productions like Witchy Poo at the theater, and also her involvement with Roger and my brain's not working. Diana on their summer camp programs, and Isabel, my granddaughter, has got her whole future mapped out. I mean, she's got Witchy Poo as well as I in her plans for the rest of her life, and she's taken to now learning magic tricks, which actually she's very good, and I can't figure out how she does them. And this is all part of the legacy that Roger and Diana are leaving behind. It's touching. It's wonderful. She thinks of the theater as her play space. She knows every nook and cranny of it, and she's just one of, as you heard, thousands and thousands. So it's really a fabulous thing that's on your agenda tonight, and it's a wonderful opportunity. I hope you all will enjoy it as much as I enjoyed certain decisions that I got to make when I was up there.
Thank you very much, Larry. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? I'm going to close the public comment and bring it back to council for action and further discussion. Anyone wishing to make a comment? Okay, Councilmember Edwards.
So listening to Mayor Barnett's comments, it makes me think of all the council people that I've known over my 25 years here. And the Sebastiani Theater is a thread between every single council members, whether you got along with them or not. It's something that is important. My kids, who are 5 and 7, Madeline and Sullivan, also have magic tricks because they attend 2 of the summer camps, and I can't figure them out either. And they come back from the nature camp so dirty that I don't know how they ever get clean. This is when Mr. Bellick spoke about his top 5 things, I consider it. I worked with Larry on keeping something that's not there, which is that hotel up on the hillside. And every time I look up at that hillside, I think of legacy of Sonoma, and not just for myself, but for the community and for my children. So I'm going to wholeheartedly support this opportunity. I think it's, when we look at it, whatever council looks at it 25 or 50 years from now, they're going to say, wow, what a bargain we got for that. And I'm going to completely support it. So I'll be ready to make a motion whenever.
You could do that right now if you wanted to.
So I will do that. So I will move to recommend a resolution to the City Council adopting, oh, sorry, wrong one.
Page
I got it right here.
228.
Got it, wrong resolution. So a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sonoma approving a lease agreement for the lease of the Sebastiani Theater and other related documents and making CEQA findings.
And I will second. And I will take the mayor's privilege on this one, because this has been something that I have worked on the entire 8 years that I have been on council. And so, I can't do that?
I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm in here, all right. So I'm just going to take the mayor's privilege of making the second on this one because of my 8 years on council. So I wanted to say that this has been an ongoing issue for me, and one in which I find very satisfying. I too have a 27-year-old son who started out in so many different programs, and I will tell you, you know, Diana with her ropes course and, you know, all the ways in which the two of you, Roger and Diana, have led the youth of this community. It's just absolutely astounding. And you've seen that it wasn't enough just to handle the youth. It had to be the young adult. It had to be the adults. And then the foundation comes along, which can't get any better than that, with dinner and a movie. And I'm just so glad that my Monday nights will be free, because maybe I might be able to go to a few of those movies now that I haven't been able to do. But I just think it's an incredible, incredible story here for this community, and one that's absolutely represented by that respect. So working with staff, our attorney, city manager, David, and so many different iterations, I just want to say this is an incredible feat. I'm very glad, because I think it puts this in a position. I also feel, as Jeannie feels, that this is improvements that need to be made, but this is history. It's the one thing that we're preserving, is history and culture here in Sonoma. And that, for me, is just another added benefit. I wish the foundation the best of all luck in their fundraising efforts, because it is a great cause. It is something that definitely the community will share in. And I'm sorry if I took advantage for other council members, but this is one in which I felt exceedingly passionate. Now, if anyone else would like to say something, Councilmember Cook.
I just wanted to say quickly, I see a lot of talent here, and I want to thank city staff and all of you for everything you've done. And what past Mayor Barnett said, it is true. There's very few things that you get to do on the council that's a legacy. I remember the pink door got painted white, so that's one that didn't last very long. But I will be supporting this tonight, and I just want to thank everybody involved, and thank you, Roger, for all you do for the community, you and Diane.
All right, and we'll do Councilmember Hundley and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I'm still a relative new kid in town. I think I've lived here for 3.5 years now, and in full disclosure, when I started learning about the theater at first, and I heard about the sort of partnership between the city and the theater, I was actually a little bit skeptical. That my inner miser was wondering, why the city was committed to so much money every year. But now that I've been on the inside and I see that we actually have partnerships with a lot of organizations, and the difference about this particular one is that it concerns an asset that once it's let go, we can't have again. So it's why we have a longer term relationship together. But the first time I went in was 2 summers ago. It was probably a 100-degree day, and I decided to go see Disney Pixar's Inside Out. And at first, I was struck by the beauty inside, which people had described to me, but I'd never seen in person. And then I started thinking about, how lucky Sonoma was to have it. And then, you look at the stage, and I mean, maybe this is what you guys see when you see the stage, but you just, can't help think of all the things that could be up there and all the possibility of, community events. So I'm happy that we got to finally sign these papers so that people can feel confident about investing money into your organization, and happy to be a part of it. Thank you all.
And Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte.
Well, knowing some of the board members, I'm so excited about our commitment, the city's commitment, because as others have said, it's a legacy. And I'm so used to these type of theaters because I grew up in San Francisco and saw many of them, and it's so nice. I have fun stories about Sebastiani shooting pigeons off of the theater in the old days. He would just get out there and kill pigeons to get them off of the marquee. So those are fun stories I remember that have been told. And but knowing this board, I know that you're going to keep up with your commitment, because you know it's more important than anyone could imagine. And you can actually go to this theater and get a real small bag of popcorn and a real small soda. And you can buy just a few pieces of licorice and not make a commitment to a whole bag of Twizzlers. So, I mean, that's all I can add. You know, everyone else has said it's simple for me. But, so thank you. I'm so glad I'm part of this. I have bad news, though. My family, nobody lives past 72, so I'm not going to see any release in 25 years. But for those of you who are going to be around, God bless you all.
Okay, so we have a motion. Has everyone commented? All right, and we have a second. So I believe at this point in the history of this council, we will now have a vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte,
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Hunley,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
Mayor Gallion.
Aye.
Thank you.
So with that, we have passed the resolution, and for 25 years. And it's a 5-0 vote. So we'll move on now. If you wanted to stay for the show, you can continue. But if not, if you wanted to move on, we'd understand. So congratulations to all that are here, and keep up the good work.
From the depths of my heart, I thank you.
We'll just take a moment here while the council chamber is clear. Okay, so we're going to continue on. Our next item is item 7D, which is consideration, discussion, and possible action to approve a resolution adopting local climate action measures as referenced in the Climate Action 2020 plan. City Manager Carol Giovannato, you're taking over.
Thank you, Mayor Gallion, members of the City Council. In August, staff brought forward the Climate Action 2020 plan representing a coordinated effort amongst the 9 cities and the county to address efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The plan was a result of extensive amount of work of staff, local and regional partners, business leaders, and consultants. The outcome for Sonoma was the recommendation of 22 climate action measures, which will bring Sonoma closer to meeting its climate 2020 GHG reduction targets. At that same time the CAP was being presented for adoption, litigation was filed by the California River Watch against the county and the County Regional Climate Protection Agency, also known as RCPA, challenging the EIR utilized by RCPA in approving and preparing the Climate Action Plan. Due to the potential exposure to litigation through the city's participation in the JPA, the city attorney advised that the approval of the CAP be held in abeyance until the lawsuit was concluded. The lack of an approved CAP or coordinated plan does not lessen the need for Sonoma to continue working towards addressing climate change measures and is in line with the council's goals. These efforts to increase the focus will need to be addressed in a collaborative approach through a combination of resources. Staff has been reviewing options of moving forward with implementation of the measures as defined in the CAP and a methodology to create a timeline and work plan to meet the city's targets along with the other duties and priorities as set in the council goals. So moving forward, we have, as staff is proposing, 3 steps forward. The first is to seek assistance through regional support through the Climate Protection Authority, or RCPA. First and foremost, the city will work with RCPA to develop a CAP measure implementation work plan for 2017 that will leverage regional efforts led by the RCPA on behalf of the entire staff working group, which is all 10 local governments. The RCPA will continue to provide coordination across all local jurisdiction, pursue grant funds for implementation, develop a model policy and program tools, update the GHG inventories, and monitor the CAP implementation progress. Some of these efforts have stalled due to the resource constraints, but RCPA is working to secure funding to ensure these services can be offered to the city in 2017 and beyond. And I'd like to note, Wendy Atkins is our representative on the staff working group and has really done a great job for the city. The RCPA also provides for the management and oversight of several grant-funded programs that are underway at least through 2017 that can help accelerate GHG reduction efforts in Sonoma by providing technical assistance, rebates, financing, planning tools, and trainings to various audiences. There are several programs that RCPA promotes and assists with, and those are listed in your agenda packet. And they also collaborate between the city and the county's Energy Independence Office, which brings important building retrofit tools to our property owners that want to install water efficiency, energy efficiency, and renewable energy measures. They also promote the Sonoma County Energy Watch, the Property Assessed Clean Energy, or the PACE financing. They work with Sonoma Clean Power, which allows residents to easily sign up for our local energy program. So in the near term, the city can work with these and other regional partners as identified in the Regional Climate Action Plan to promote all the existing tools and encourage greater participation by local businesses and residents. These all cumulatively will assist us in reaching our target goals. And there are several in your agenda illustrations in the table, and I won't go through each one of them, of ways that the RCPA can assist us with our local measures. Our second recommendation is to enlist outside staff assistance. This is something that we would like to see moving forward that will assist our city staff. Is the consideration is being given to enlisting the services of a Sonoma State College intern program. It's somewhat apparent in reviewing the measures and the calculations of the credits currently attributed to Sonoma that there is potential that some of the city's existing programs were either overlooked or undervalued. These areas that should be these are areas that should be reviewed to assure that we have an accurate base level. And by way of example, items such as the inventory of solar installations, updating of energy codes, and the city's vehicle inventory already exist or have been completed, and we need to add those in to make sure that we're starting at an accurate base level. Additionally, staff believes that consideration could be given to the use of potentially a community volunteer to work with city departments to really assist in educating our own staff in opportunities to increase our GHG reductions through operational changes or future budgeting of equipment. Climate change is a process of both action and education, both externally and internally. And what I mean by that is, a lot of us are involved in climate action, and hyper-focused on it, but some staff aren't involved in it. And so we need to educate, externally, as I said, but we also need to educate internally and get our city staff up to speed with what climate action really means. And I think through the use of, a college intern that can come in and evaluate and inventory what we are actually doing now, because I think that we have missed some of the things that we're doing and not getting credit for, and actually be able to work with our city staff to help them to really understand, what we can do, and maybe even making not wholesale changes immediately, but even just taking some small steps that can really resonate and make some big changes and have some big value that, you know, have potentially been overlooked. So I think that that's really, I think that's really important that we get buy-in from our city staff, and by just them understanding what changes can be made and really have a value to the city. And thirdly, is working directly with the CSEC, our Community Services and Environment Commission. The CSEC has already established a subcommittee to work on this project and could be utilized throughout the process, you know, as the further steps are refined. The adoption of the measures is obviously key as a first step, and staff looks at the CSEC as a local public aid education component as being vital to this plan and the plan's success, and this is where I believe CSEC can play a major role on behalf of the city. So from staff's perspective, our next steps would be for the council to consider to begin the process by adopting these measures. And we're seeking council's discussion and direction to begin by looking at these steps that I've outlined here and to move the process forward by adopting all 22 climate action measures as detailed in the Climate Action 2020 plan, to authorize staff to review options for a college intern and or a community volunteer supported by a community volunteer to assist with updating the current inventory data and designing an implementation program, and then to also work with the CSEC subcommittee on implementation and community outreach. So this is, again, a kind of jumping off point to start really, you know, moving the plan forward. It's not, you know, it is a way to again, you know, it might not be as robust as I know some people would like it to be, but we need to move forward. We need to kind of walk, crawl before we walk. It's a way to, again, you know, engage the program, adopt the measures, and really get everybody on board. And I think really, honestly, as I've gotten more involved in this, get some accurate base data. Again, I think that we've undervalued some of the things that we're doing, and we don't have the credit taken that we should have. I think that's key, and getting some outside assistance. I mean, our staff, you know, is really working diligently on council goals and and daily tasks, and I think, you know, getting that outside assistance really will help them in moving it forward. So that is the recommendation tonight presented to council, and I look forward to your discussion and direction.
Thank you. Certainly a lot of work in putting this together. I myself appreciate that. And if there's any questions from council members, okay, all right, good enough. Then we're going to open it up to the public.
Hi, I'm Fred Allebach at 19550 8th Street East, and speaking about crawling before you can walk, I used to live in Chicago, and I was outside a blues bar, and Big Bad Leroy Brown got out of a big limousine, and he had all these rings and stuff and his coterie with him, and I said, how do you get up there and do that? I want to play like that. And he said, well, you got to crawl before you can walk. So I'd like to stand in support of Carol's recommendation tonight.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Tom Conlon, 393 West Napa Street, and I'm also here with supporting Transition Sonoma Valley, who's been big on this issue. I really appreciate the city manager's leadership on this issue, as well as the commission, the Community Service and Environment Commission, really setting the stage for your incoming manager as well. Carol gets it, and I'm glad that, I mean, you guys are lucky that you have somebody doing this. I also appreciate the council's decision to embrace Evergreen, and you really are leading the rest of the county at this point. The county's been sitting back on its haunches since the lawsuit, but Carol's moving it forward, so kudos to y'all. I believe this will provide reputational dividends for the city for years to come. So that's something you should be proud of. I especially support the city bringing on additional support for staff, interns, volunteers, whatever that might look like in the future. Existing staff has worked diligently on the climate action plan to date, and I credit them for their efforts. But to implement the plan, it's going to take a lot of extra work that's really not in your current scope of what's budgeted for the city. So people really do care about this issue, and I'm sure here in Sonoma County, in the city in particular, we had 200 to 300 people out on Friday, some of you, in support of the Dakota Access Pipeline protest. And people care about this issue, and they will come forward with the best ideas. RCPA is also very resource constrained right now, and they have provided some response to our initial concerns about the climate action plan, but they haven't really been able to follow up on some of the issues that we raised. And so we think it will be important for the council to work with staff as we become a pilot implementation community within the county. And so from Transition Sonoma Valley, we hope to work with you guys and continue to keep everybody moving forward in a way that meets our community's needs. Following on the Rhoton Sebastiani Theater, those are the kinds of things that we feel proud about in this community when we can accomplish things like that. And I hope to look back in a few years and say, we've done that here in the city with respect to climate action. So thank you for your consideration of my comments.
Thank you, Tom.
Larry Barnett, 5th Street East. I think this is an excellent step, and I commend Carol for recommending it to you. I suspect that she's correct, that with a further analysis of what the city's already undertaken kind of on its own, that there will be additional credit that can be shown for its reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And so I think it's also wonderful when the city of Sonoma can demonstrate leadership in the county. It's been a historical truth for the city, on and off for many years, and mostly on. And I think it's a nice reputation to have. I always liked the idea of other cities looking to Sonoma for some leadership, despite the fact that we're as small as we are. No one can take away the heritage that we have as the birthplace of the state of California and a very historic role in California history. But Sonoma continues in its own way to make little bits of history, and this is one of the ways in which you could do that tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Amy Harrington. I just wanted to say how impressed I am with the city staff for the 22 measures. When we brought this up at the CSCC again after the lawsuit, there was an idea that maybe only 3 measures could be considered, or sort of what were like the top low-hanging fruit, and I don't think this list represents that at all. I think it's a significant contribution, and also really is, undeniably an example of overcoming roadblocks and being creative and working together as a team, the entire city and commission. So I think this is something really to be proud of. And thank you so much, Carol, for all that hard work.
Thank you, Amy.
Caitlin Cornwall, Sonoma Ecology Center. Just echoing what a lot of people have said. I'm just very thankful to Carol and to Wendy for working on this, and the turnaround from the last time it was before you was really heartening. There's a quote I've heard someone at a state agency, it might have, I'm not sure which one it was, that Sonoma County, that California leads the nation in terms of environmental policy, and that Sonoma County is the California of California, and maybe the city of Sonoma can be the Sonoma County of Sonoma County. That's fantastic. It really will help other cities come on board, and I think it will be very satisfying for the city to sort of be walking its talk as a green place, an innovative place, an attractive place, and it also helps normalize for the city to take these actions. It helps normalize a low carbon lifestyle for everyone who lives here, which is really important to set that example. So thank you to you on the council and you on staff.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. Anyone else?
Vic Conforti, 206 East Spain Street. I just wanted to ask you to ask the architects in Sonoma to step up as well, and I'd like to offer my help in organizing something of that nature. The AIA has had a program for some years called Net Zero 2020, which would fit right in with this program, where the goal is to be designing buildings that have net zero energy use, with super insulated, well-designed buildings that have energy, photovoltaic energy systems as a part of them, so the actual total energy use minus the photovoltaic energy gathering is zero. And the architects, most of the architects in town are sympathetic with this, and so if you could ask us to join in, we would like to do that, and I'd like to help you organize that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? Seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to council for action and further discussion. Councilmember Edwards.
So to address Caitlin, there's a reason why they don't call it Santa Rosa County, because Sonoma has always been in a leadership position, from my perspective. So in conversations with city manager this morning, and the conversations we've had for the last several months on this issue, I'm fully in support of moving forward on this. But I'm very adamant about having that intern, somebody that can be objective and come in and work with all departments. And but I think we really need to give credit to not only the city, but also to a lot of individuals in this town, grape farmers, other people who've been doing a lot of things. Some of the biggest solar producers in the area are grape producers, and there's people out there that just do it very quietly. I feel pretty good about our house. I think we have 28 panels on our house. We've had them for 6 years, and it was $30,000, and it's already paid for itself. And my kids who are 5 and 7, you know, I pay them a penny for turning off lights, and because they have a habit of leaving lights on. But we basically have a zero bill in our home because of that. And I'm trying to teach my kids about conservation and doing what they can. And we don't walk to school every day, but we try. And I'm trying to teach my kids those types of things. But I think we also need to reach out to the community that's already doing something, and the great work that the staff did with just changing our light bulbs on all of our, I can't remember what the number is of street lights we have, but and just the tens of thousands of dollars that we're saving that we can put towards this kind of program, I think is great. But we do need to get credit, and I think that, you know, some people get really passionate about it and get angry back and forth. I mean, I haven't seen that from the council or staff, but we just need to work together on this and continue moving forward, regardless of what political opinions or things that are out there in the world. This is Sonoma. We just need to take care of our local resource. And I've had conversations with people on a kind of a statewide level and a national level, and some issues around climate protection. But it's really just need to set the example here. And I agree with all of the speakers that we have that great opportunity to do that. And I think the time that we've taken to make this decision is appropriate. So, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilmember Hundley?
I think that this is a great plan of using resources that are so close to us, and you know, it's one of the examples that our small size gives us the most flexibility to keep going while the rest of the county figures out how they want to handle this plan while the lawsuit's still pending. I'd like to thank Mayor Gallion, who's been involved with this for since its inception, perhaps. And so, even though the big plan is got stalled in Sonoma, we are chugging along as we do, and it's just really refreshing that we can even have this conversation with such a place of understanding about moving forward. Where I grew up in the South, that would be impossible because you'd have to first have arguments about whether you should be having a conversation. So I'm proud to be here, and I will be supporting it.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Oh, sure, thank you. Well, you know, I stand by something, these kind of decisions, because I share, as I've often shared here, would you rather have a slow yes instead of a quick no? And that's exactly what this is. There was a little bit of a dust-up, but this is the yes. And it took a while because we had to be very careful. So I'm just really proud. Thank you, Carol, and I know the staff has worked very hard. I agree with Councilmember Edwards about the interns and/or community volunteer. I think it's really important to have someone, because a lot of times when you have your regular work, you lose sight of the goal. And I think that someone with a fresh mind that comes in here would be able to keep this issue on task.
Don't forget the
Thanks.
architects.
And those darn architects.
Keep them in the
David.
And
David
I also,
Cook.
and I also will be supporting this. I want to thank staff, the CSEC, for all their good work here. And I'm always reminded, I had a friend call me up and said on the Facebook, seeing the lighted plaza, and said, I thought you guys were green in California. And I said, you know, that's all Sonoma Clean Energy, you know, coming from the geysers. So I think that this hopefully shows the world that, you know, we care. And it's a time that we really need to focus on, you know, doing the right thing. So thank you, Carol. I know that this is going to be one of your last meetings, but I just want to thank you for you know, everything you've done for this, and especially Mayor Gallion for all your work with climate action in the last 8 years for the city of Sonoma. Very well appreciated.
Oh, thank you very much, David. Well, I'll leave my comments until after someone makes a motion, because I
I'll
just
make it.
can't believe this is happening, so I just want to get it down on the books.
So I'd like to make a motion, if it's correct.
You have a resolution?
The new one.
If you would.
The resolution.
Yeah.
Right here.
Well, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sonoma adopting Climate Action 2020 measures for the City of Sonoma.
And do we have a second? Okay. Okay. No, I will sign it, so I'm fine with this. You two make your actions, okay? So, okay, so Councilmember Cook. And if there's no further comment, I'll give you mine. Proudest moment in 2009 was when we signed on as the first city for the Regional Climate Protection Authority. At that point, it was all, you know, a new vista and a new frontier. I feel all we're doing at this point is starting yet another decade of new steps that we will be taking in climate action, and we will be doing it for the city. And we'll be doing it together as a county. Others will take a look at what we're doing here tonight, and they will follow form. I am very thrilled, because I was all set to be in this space somewhere around August, but that didn't happen. And here we are 90 days, but we're 90 days for the better, because in 90 days we identified a plan, I think an even more effective plan for how we'll go about this in the future. And if we had not had, you know, the ability of our city manager to take our silos of Sonoma Clean Power and our Regional Climate Protection Authority and say, you know, hey, we're busting out on this one. We're going to go ahead and we're going to be an enterprise city, and believe me, there are looks of disgust and disdain, okay, when that is mentioned, and I'm sitting as a director on a board, because they know that this is such an incredible movement, and this is where they all need to go. And it requires dollars in order to be able to do that, but it's forward thinking. It's someone that's saying that this is not necessarily an extra step, this is the next step. And this is what Carol has done and identified for us as a city to set this up to be a very successful path. And as we move forward, I'm sure our intern, our community volunteer, these are people of engagement. This is not a paid position, all right? This is going to be strictly just unpaid. You're going to do it because of the love or the goodness of what you know to do this, to assist both in a commission and staff, and working with the county itself. And this could be the beginning of your community ambassadors in climate as a program that might happen in other cities. So I just want to say, without going into too much, I'm not excited enough, okay? But I just want to tell you that this has just been a highlight for me and really coming full circle. And thank you, Carol, for your leadership. Thank you, Community Service and Environment Commissions, for your leadership and what you have done. Thank you, community members who are so engaged in this, like Caitlin and Tom, Transition Town. We are just so fortunate to be living here. And last of all, let me say the new group of architects that will be coming on board. Just remember, we have general plan coming up. This will be probably one of the things that'll be incorporated in that. So with that, I just want to say I don't think I could ever be prouder. So thank you. Let's do roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte,
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Hunley,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
Mayor Gallion.
Aye. So we have passed with a 5-0 vote a resolution of the City Council of the City of Sonoma adopting climate action 2020 measures for the City of Sonoma. Thank you. Oh. Thank you so much. And now we're on 7E, which is discussion, consideration, and possible action on changes to the regulation of vacation rentals with David Goodison, our planning director.
Thank you, Mayor Gallion, members of the City Council. As part of its ongoing discussion of housing issues, the Council has requested a review and discussion of the city's vacation rental regulations. Under the Development Code, a vacation rental is defined as the rental or letting of up to 2 complete residential units containing bedrooms, kitchens, and bathrooms for a period of less than 30 consecutive days. Unlike a bed and breakfast, an on-site manager is not required for a vacation rental. Operators are required to maintain a business license and to pay transient occupancy taxes to the city. I'd like to emphasize that this definition does not allow for the Airbnb type of rental of a room or rooms within an occupied residence. That's actually never been an allowed use within the city of Sonoma. In terms of regulations, the city did not really address vacation rentals in its zoning regulations for many years until about 1999. And at that time, the council became concerned that an increasing number of vacation rentals were becoming established in residential neighborhoods throughout the city and were creating conflicts with long-term residences. And so it is at that point that the first rules for vacation rentals were adopted. In terms of where things stand today, in residential zoning districts, vacation rentals are not an allowed use except as the adaptive reuse of a historic structure. So that's a use permit process, but it's limited again to historic structures. And vacation rentals actually have an extra bar to clear because in addition to other findings, it's also necessary for the Planning Commission to find that the restoration and rehabilitation of this structure, that it's fallen into such a level of disrepair that the economic benefits of adaptive reuse are necessary to stem further deterioration, correct deficient conditions, or avoid demolition. So that finding is exclusive to the adaptive reuse of a structure as a vacation rental. It doesn't apply to any other kind of adaptive reuse. And that's a pretty high bar. Since that standard was adopted in 2009, only 2 applications for vacation rental conversions have been approved under that process. So that's for residential zoning districts. Vacation rentals are also allowed as under a use permit in the mixed use and the commercial zones, but that is as a normal use permit where the primary findings have to do with compatibility. So it's a much easier bar to clear in terms of getting an approval in those zoning districts. And so, for example, we've seen a former residence used for many years as an office. I'm talking about a property on Broadway that was approved as a vacation rental earlier this year. We've also seen the Sonoma Court Shops example. And so while we haven't seen a lot of these applications over the past 3 years, the Planning Commission has approved 9 use permit applications involving the conversion of commercial spaces to vacation rentals. So in some instances, you've got the conversion of an existing tenant space, but then you have other approvals that have involved the conversion of apartments to vacation rentals. Although that has not occurred recently, it is an option under the current rules. Right now, we have 55 recognized vacation rentals within city limits. Of those, about half were designated as legal nonconforming units through the 1999 regulations. So we've had 27 approved since that time. In terms of enforcement, with the advent of Airbnb and other online booking services, once those came into play, Sonoma began experiencing a proliferation of illegal short-term rentals. And about 3 years ago, I believe, the council began to address this problem by authorizing the hiring of a consultant, Muni Services Financial, to review online services and identify potentially unauthorized vacation rentals and bed and breakfasts. And that method was quite effective in identifying instances of potentially illegal vacation rentals. It was almost too effective, though, in terms of staff's ability to enforce and investigate those potentially illegal uses. In fact, the ability of planning staff was pretty much limited to focusing on just the most egregious examples. So in February of this year, the council approved a proposal by the city manager to establish a part-time code enforcement position managed through the city prosecutor's office. And that's made a huge difference in our ability to follow up and abate illegal vacation rentals in a timely manner. But the main point of discussion tonight is options for changes in the regulations. So that's the kind of direction we're looking for tonight is, broadly speaking, what directions is the council interested in investigating in terms of potential changes to the existing regulations. So we've identified a number of different ideas. It's certainly not an exclusive list. For example, one change that the council might consider would be to, instead of having a use permit allowance for vacation rentals, change that to a zoning permit. A use permit runs with the land. So once it's approved, it stays approved through changes in ownership. A zoning permit, in contrast, can be designed to expire upon a change of ownership. And that could make a big difference in terms of the financial incentives that right now are associated with the vacation rental use. Another potential change that the council might make is within the mixed-use zone and the commercial zone, eliminate any allowance for converting a residential unit into a vacation rental unit. Or that allowance could be eliminated altogether. The council could consider changes to the adaptive reuse provisions applicable to converting a historic residence to a vacation rental. It might, in terms of changes that would be more geared towards helping with enforcement, the council might consider requiring existing and future vacation rentals to post their business license number or TOT certification number in online advertising. It might consider requiring an annual fee on vacation rentals to help monitor compliance. And the council might choose to eliminate vacation rentals as an allowed use altogether. Now, that's not going to affect existing approved vacation rentals, but it is an option in terms of how you treat them moving forward. At the same time, the council has heard from different homeowners who've asked that consideration be given to establishing an allowance for the Airbnb model. Now, the council looked at that rather recently, back in 2015, and at that time the council decided that it did not wish to create such an allowance out of a concern for potential impacts on neighboring residences and the potential to create a disincentive for homeowners to engage in the long-term rental of unused rooms. However, as the council is revisiting the regulation of vacation rentals generally, it may choose to revisit this option as part of its review. So again, we're here just looking for broad direction. We'll take that, build on it, and refine it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Do we have questions of staff, council members? Madeline, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Carol and I discussed this today, and one of the things that I'm excited about, of course, New York and San Francisco are still involved in litigation with respect to Airbnb, with respect to, I think, residents who do this illegally are fined, and Airbnb now in New York, they want to fine also Airbnb. So I'm really excited about this because I think I've said before that some of these wonderful, awesome, great, big corporations roll right over us as cities because we're not ready for them. We never anticipated the popularity, and this is just an additional problem. So I really like that part of it, and I'd love us to understand and stay on top of that because that would really benefit the city of Sonoma. Even though we're small, obviously dollars are still dollars. So that's just one of the things that I've noticed and I'm very excited about. That's just a comment.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else wishing to comment? Or questions? Okay. All right. So let's go out to the public.
I'm exhausted. Larry Barnett, 5th Street East.
Made you work here tonight, Larry.
Well, I'll say. But it was because you had great, interesting items. When I proposed to the sitting council in 1999 that we ban vacation rentals in residential zones, Airbnb, of course, didn't exist. In fact, the internet wasn't really up and cranking the way it was going to shortly thereafter. And the council unanimously supported that restriction. And when I think back and look at the intervening years, it's hard for me to imagine what things would have been like here if we hadn't taken that step. And sometimes you do have to make some assumptions about the future and come up with policies that you think are forward-looking. I think that the mistake we made, looking back, was making these use permits that travel with the land. I think that was an oversight. And I think the staff's suggestion that you develop the permitting system that basically terminates with the sale of the property, so this doesn't become a use in perpetuity, in fact doesn't become an investment and speculative opportunity for people to buy houses, convert them to commercial uses, generating much higher amounts of money and therefore inflating everything else in price around here, which is an ongoing problem we have. Protecting the housing stock was the basis of the original measure in 1999, and it still, I think, is the driving force behind controlling the number of vacation rentals that are in town. I think that the big decision before you is the nature of the license that will be given, and whether or not you want to continue to accept applications in the mixed use and commercial zones. I think that a conversion from a office use to a vacation rental use is also associated with property values, and but it's complicated, because those properties are already valued with a commercial income or revenue stream, so they're operating under a different set of assumptions than a purely residential property. I think the conversion of a living unit to a vacation rental, in my opinion, shouldn't be permitted. I think that if you've got something that's out there in the rental for housing, it ought to stay that way. I don't think converting it to vacation rentals makes sense under any conditions. But you've got time now because of the resolution you passed earlier. You don't have to make a decision tonight. This can be very exploratory, and I commend you for taking it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Anyone else wishing to speak on this issue?
Vic Conforti, 206 East Spain. I agree with Larry that converting existing apartments or residential units to vacation rentals is a real hit to the housing stock. And if I heard David correctly, the apartments would be a possibility if it was if it were in a medium density or higher density residential zoning. And would an apartment building be excluded now from the conversion?
Through the mayor?
Yes.
Well, again, vacation rentals are prohibited in residential zoning districts, including the medium density and higher density residential zoning districts, except as an adaptive reuse. And that circumstance doesn't really lend itself to most apartments, and at least has never arisen. That said, we certainly have apartments in the mixed use zone and in the commercial zone. And under the current rules, one may apply for a use permit to convert an apartment to a vacation rental.
So that would be like instances along Broadway and some of the buildings there, and then maybe the apartments down the corner of MacArthur and Broadway. I think that's I believe it's a commercial zone actually in that instance. I'm not certain, but either mixed use or commercial. So you might want to consider that one item that where there are commercial zones with apartments, that might be another area that's clearly impacting the housing stock. I mean, I could see other commercial uses would not be impacting the housing stock, and maybe that's the measure that you want to use. How does it affect the housing stock? I have something in the back of my mind though is thinking that doing a vacation rental in an existing home on a very modest level for some of the population here in town would be a income support to them. I mean, I'm thinking of older people who have a home with empty bedrooms, and they could be well served by some extra income, and that where it's very low number per year and very small number, maybe one or two units or bedrooms or whatever, that there could be that could be a positive thing.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hi, Fred Allebach, 19550 8th Street East. I wasn't planning on speaking, but when Vic just said that, it caused me to think that I'm not sure where I heard it. Maybe it was from David about possibly with senior units having a live-in apartment where people would be able to do home health care with a unit like that. So I would like to see something like that be in place rather than have a vacation rental for seniors to boost their income. That there would be some kind of way that if the city already had plans in that regard to augment the housing stock by using an existing unit in the house and then taking care of senior needs, that I think that would be preferable than having a vacation rental in that situation.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for further action or discussion. Council members? Rachel?
Since this is at the end of a long agenda, I'm going to spare you all my housing diatribe and go straight to the list. I would like to change the permit requirement from a use permit to a zoning permit. I heard that there are cities out there changing their existing land use permits to zoning permits. It's just what I heard. They're doing it over a very long time frame.
Earlier this year adopted a new zoning code that provides for zoning permits.
Well, this is for existing land use permits, like right now.
Doing away with all use permits.
No, just changing, like one person already got a land use permit, they are turning it into like a zoning permit. I know, it sounds crazy, but that's what I heard. I affirm our existing prohibition of vacation rentals in residential areas, including single rooms. I think next year we will be discussing a number of options people will have to utilize some of their extra space in a way that promotes residential use. Even within the commercial zone, mixed use, residential, even regardless of whether it's in mixed use or not. But also, on the flip side, you have the housing argument on the residential side, but the fact is, we're such a small area, and, if we want to encourage some sort of diversity of businesses here, I think that losing our office space to vacation rentals is similarly tragic. So, I don't support vacation rentals anywhere except for adaptive reuse, and in which case, I would actually like to tighten up the finding of economic necessity. I've only watched one of these, but it seemed to me like there should be some sort of comparison towards the original or existing uses versus is it actually necessary that it becomes a vacation rental. And that's it.
Councilmember Cook.
Well, I'm glad that we have the moratorium in effect, so we have some time to look at this, but I guess tonight we're kind of looking a little bit at the direction. I'm with, I wish these were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It would make it a little bit easier, but the first one, I like the change it to a zoning permit. I think that is very important. One of the most important ones that I think is requires existing future vacation rentals to post their business license or TOT certificate number on advertising. I think that's great for enforcement. So I would definitely agree with going somewhere. But tonight, because we do have the moratorium in effect, I would rather have this discussion in a year, the way we're going to go through and hopefully go for a 2-year deal on the moratorium, and that would give the council at that time to make these decisions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte.
So I agree with the zoning permit instead of a use permit and posting business or TOT license. I think that's, I think that would be really valuable. But I can only give you an example. When we moved to Sonoma, our house, I think, we bought a home for $630, and I think our taxes were pushing it maybe $7,000. Right now, they're $10,000. If I was a single woman, I really believe a vacation rental would help me to be able to, help my income just to a certain point. And I think that's really valuable. I've had seniors, women and men, who have approached me with respect to this issue, and I would just like to just see possibly a certain amount of these type of approvals. But I'm sort of leaning towards something like that, having no information other than I think it's a financial burden for people to bear these costs that are now that are now affecting seniors. Thanks.
Okay. And Councilmember Edwards.
So zoning permit for sure for me. Adaptive reuse, I completely agree with. The possibility of the existing, I don't know if it's possible with the 55 that we have already, an annual fee just to be part of that issue. But when it comes to vacation rentals for seniors, et cetera, and on last Sunday, with the work that the whole community's done with Irma Castillo, my kids bought her a rocking chair, and we delivered it over there. And there was a young lady named Julie that works for AmeriCorps that was painting the shutters on her house. And so I struck up a conversation with her, and we got to the conversation about housing. This is a young lady who's 20-something years old, paying $2,600 a month for a little apartment in Santa Rosa. So when I think of seniors that are, maybe one income, I see such a great opportunity to have renters like this young woman. $2,600 will cover a lot of taxes and so on and so forth. So I just think that the opportunity for people to turn their homes into vacation rentals, to me, there are many hotels. And that I would want to discourage that. But create these opportunities for people to rent rooms from others, and I'm really not a big fan of vacation rentals. I think it hurts the community character, and we have the ones we have. 55. That's over 10% of our hotel stock. Basically, I think we have about 500 rooms in the valley, and I don't want to increase that because it is a business opportunity for people out there. And so those are the issues that I'll be supporting. I'd like to see come forward to us.
So, staff-wise, you're just taking our recommendations at this point? This isn't motions or anything like that?
Correct.
Okay, so Councilmember Hundley.
Oh yeah, I skipped two things. One, I also agree with posting the business license number online, and I would like to explore the fee for monitoring.
Okay, so when I come down to this, I was very much in favor of the zoning, changing that to a zoning permit. I felt that we really need to look at the saturation level within a specific commercial or mixed-use zone to see what percentage we want to have as vacation rentals. So that might be something that'll come forward after some of our other studies are coming back with our housing element. And then I was going to say the adaptive reuse, I think that is a difficult use to actually qualify for. So I am in favor of keeping it, as it is, because I do feel for some of our historic components that this would be something that would aid the owners in maintaining and keeping the historical significance of some of our areas in Sonoma. To post their business license number or TOT certification number on their advertising or online advertising, I feel there should be a unique number that the city is establishing for a vacation rental. Whatever that is, I'm not quite sure that those are the two things that I would like to have prevalent, but it has to be a unique number, something in which the city could easily say and verify, as far as that's concerned, or the firm that we're hiring for compliance. I believe in an annual fee. I think that that this is something that we will need because we are actually doing calculations as far as this is concerned. I also think that we need to look at the number of days that we're actually establishing our vacation rentals for. Because again, the time period, is it too long? Is it too short? And then I'm not in favor of eliminating all vacation rentals either. I'd like to say that as we come back and we study accessory junior units as something that we might add to our code, then given seniors' ability to look for additional income, this would be a rental of more than 30 days that would happen in the accessory junior unit. And this is a good way to see if that's successful or not, and if that will answer the question before you give this away as a weekend destination, or someone doing it like living inside of a home and doing a vacation rental. So I think some of those answers are coming forward, but what I don't see, and I still don't see here, and I won't be in a position to actually refer for this later, is that if you have Airbnb and you have VRBO as your units and they are advertising in the city, it's going to be enforcement. How are we going to handle that? And so unless we have the other side also working on a solution, and by that I mean Airbnb or VRBO, you know, having something where they're also helping and monitoring, we're not going to get that compliance that everyone is looking for. And we are going to have, you know, residences that are going to be doing this, and it's just a matter of tracking them down, you know, in order to get enforcement on this. So to me, I think there's a lot of public interchange that needs to happen yet on this particular item, and I look forward to that public interchange happening. Those people who are on Airbnb, who want to say, this is what we need and this is what we're at. We don't have that public element yet to be coming forward. But I think based on that the new council will be able to determine their steps. And I really think you need to look at the frequency of these rentals. In other words, if they're X amount of days, you know, in a particular season or something like that, you could also, you could tamp that down as part of one of the allowable uses. All right, and with that, if we have nothing further to say, staff, do you need any additional information, or are you good?
I think that's good for now. Thank you very much.
All right. So we will move on to item number 7F, which is discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve an employment agreement between the City of Sonoma and Kathy Capriola as the city manager. And with that, I believe that is our city manager.
Yes,
who will be
thank
taking
you.
that over.
Mayor Gallion, members of the City Council. Since I announced my retirement at the meeting of June 6th, we have been working with a professional recruitment firm to assist in the process for recruitment interview and ultimate selection of a new city manager. Through the recruitment process, the city received 46 applications. After vetting all the candidates, the council chose to conduct interviews with 4 applicants who all demonstrated outstanding skills and experience. And you also conducted second interviews with your 2 finalists. Ultimately, the City Council has selected Kathy Capriola as Sonoma's new city manager. Ms. Capriola is currently employed by the City of Novato as the Assistant City Manager and actually is a resident of Sonoma with her family. An employment agreement has been drafted by a subcommittee of the council consisting of Councilmember Edwards and Hundley. Ms. Capriola has accepted the position, and the agreement is now before the City Council for confirmation. Ms. Capriola will begin her employment on January 9th, 2017. And she will also be here on December 12th at the council meeting for a formal introduction. That concludes my staff report.
Thank you very much. Council members, any questions on this particular item?
No questions, just comments.
All right, well, why don't we wait until
Okay.
after hearing from the public? Let's go out to the public. Anyone wishing to comment on this agreement? Seeing none, I'm closing the public comment, bringing it back to council.
So firstly, I'd like to say thank you to council members Edwards and Hundley for helping with the negotiation of this contract. And I feel that I won the lottery because it was like, fine, you know, where's Waldo? On page 4, when I made my suggestion, I was so proud of that, where it says business days from the date of her receipt of notice, and I asked that it either be written or verbal, and that was it. So that was my little find Waldo. Thank you. This is really a great contract. Thank you so much for your hard work, and I appreciate.
Councilmember Cook.
I want to beat Councilmember Hundley to this motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve an employment agreement between the City of Sonoma and Kathy Caparola as city manager.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion by Councilmember Cook, seconded by Hundley. And at this point, any further discussion? I just wanted to say that I think Sonoma will be very pleased with this candidate. In all the requirements that were asked of from the public, that a lot of these were answered in response to who we selected. So I wanted to say thank you to the public for their intervention in making sure that their wishes were known, as well as the council here as we interviewed the candidate. And it was readily apparent to me, certainly after the first interview, but most assuredly after the second interview, that this was the right person with the right experience to handle the issues here in this city. And I think you will all be very, very pleased when you meet her and you get to know her when she assumes office in January, provided we vote on this item. So with that, I just want to move forward, and let's do roll call on this.
Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte,
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Hundley,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
Mayor Gallion.
Aye. So with that, we have a 5-0 vote for action to approve an employment agreement between the City of Sonoma and Kathy Capriola as city manager. Congratulations, Kathy. All right. And our last business item for the evening, those of you who have lasted, is item 7G. Discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve change in council meeting dates for the months of December 2016 and January 2017. And this, I believe, is Carol.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Gallion, members of the City Council. We would like to bring forward a proposal to reschedule your regular council meetings in December and January. In December, you normally have two regular council meetings, December 5th and December 19th. This is when you go through the certification of the most recent election, and you also then reorganize council and appoint a mayor. The Registrar of Voters has until December 6th to certify the election results. And so that is the day after the normal regular council meetings. With the depth of the election and ballot measures on this election, it is unlikely that we will be able to certify the election on the 5th. And so what we are proposing is that, and because the 19th is really bumping up against holiday schedules, we would like to propose to the council that you adjourn this meeting to a regularly scheduled meeting to be held on the 12th of December, that you only hold one meeting in December. That way we'll be assured that we will have the election results, and you will be able to certify the election on the 12th and go through the rest of your normal business on the 12th, and then adjourn that meeting for the holiday schedule. And then when looking at the January meetings, the normal first meeting of January has traditionally been canceled because it's right after the New Year's. And then the second meeting, which would be normally scheduled for January 18th, that is in conflict with the League of California Cities new mayor and council members conference in Sacramento. And so we are recommending that you reschedule that regular meeting to the following Monday, which is January 23rd. So just, there's traditionally not a significant amount of regular business items, pressing business items in January. We don't think that'll interrupt any business of necessity. by rescheduling either of these regular dates for your council meetings. And so recommending that you proceed and advise the public that you are rescheduling your regular meetings for December and January only.
Okay, any questions, council members of staff? All right. Let's go out to the public to hear any opinions. Anyone wishing to comment on this item, please step forward. Seeing none, bring it back to council. Further discussion or motion?
I move to make the changes.
All right.
Second.
Okay, so we have Councilmember Edwards, then we have Councilmember Hundley. Any further discussion on these items? Seeing none, let's do the roll call vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte,
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Councilmember Hundley,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
Mayor Gallion.
Aye.
Thank you.
So at this point, we will have this motion makes two meetings changes. One is for the month of December. Our only meeting will be December 12th. And in January, our only meeting will be January 23rd. And I will adjourn the meeting to the December 12th date when we get to that point. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I must be getting good because the attorney I already knew what he was going to say. Anyway, let's go ahead at this point. This is the regular calendar with City Council as successor agency. Seeing no issues under that, then I would move to council members' reports and comments.
Oh, I have a couple of things.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Leslie Nicholson was here this evening, and we, as she said, we're planning a panel discussion. Thank you, KSVY, to be, to be shown over a period of time. And one of the things that we discovered is that I've checked once before with the hospital when I was on the health roundtable, and our hospital, between 2015 and September 17, there were 81 overdoses and alcohol poisonings, ages 14 to 25. And so this is the number that the hospital gave me. This is one of the reasons we think it's very important to address this issue here in Sonoma, and I'm very excited to be part of that. I have a lot of different things I wanted to report on, but the other one is just what I have said publicly to this, to the audience as you've come in here, and also with the Haven. I want for us to deal with our homeless in a very, in an organized manner. We just have pieces of things going on. So I have currently updated the food distribution list, and it's being checked by these different food distribution centers, so we can have that information. I'm moving on to checking the churches to see what their role is with our homeless, and the third would be working with the county and collecting the data and the information. I think it's important that we stay on one page with this, and that's my effort, and that's what I'm trying to do, and I've said this publicly for quite some time. And I think I went to the Sonoma Valley Waste Management Agency. You know, they have a unanimous vote, which is an awful thing, and so we wanted to approve the JPA. It was before my time. And so Petaluma is not happy about it, and so we can't do anything. So there we are again, and people wonder why we can't do the business. So we're trying to change that, but that's it. Thank you.
Yes. Councilmember Edwards.
I almost forgot that Thursday's Thanksgiving. I just want to invite council members, if you want to come by and see what's happening at the Vets Building on Thursday. I want to publicly thank Sonoma Market and Stone Edge Farm, Community Cafe, Elaine Bell, a whole variety of folks, and the Rotary Club for sponsoring the turkeys that we buy from Sonoma Market, and they're giving us a great opportunity to extend the amount of food that we were able to produce. And we serve dinner at 3 o'clock on Thursday at the Vets.
Thank you so much, Gary. I'll just report out that I had a series of meetings. I went to the area agency on aging meeting, which is actually the federal funding. I wanted to see what was happening for seniors in the profile after the election and what the feelings were for our particular community. And I was quite surprised by the level of activity on this particular council. And they are representative of all the districts in the county itself, and then other groups and members at large. I thought this was excellent in the respect that they're studying many issues on both nutrition, also transportation, just accessibility for seniors in their different areas. There's quite a few committees on that, and for me, I am very interested in elder-friendly community. So this was one way that I was able to go there. But the legislative aspect of what's happening with seniors is obviously they're all very concerned about what is going to change both on a federal level. In addition to that, we had Mark Levine there for half an hour at that particular meeting, and it was great to hear that in his successive administrations, he's always been on the committee that actually works for the funding in this respect from federal to state to this agency. So there are some things that obviously we're going to have to deal with, but for the most part, it's just stay tuned. And let me get through this. All right. Additional funding to some of the food programs and nutrition programs that they didn't have before. I went to our own Design Review and Historic Preservation Commission the other night, and was very interested in their topic that they're bringing up on the historic, let me see here, discussion of the Sonoma Historic Train District. And this was quite exciting historically, both for our community and opportunities that might be presented as a result of some of the assumptions that were made. I also just wanted to state that it was a wonderful opportunity in which to see the commissioners at work, and I just wanted to comment them on their wonderful attention to detail on that particular issue, and also bringing it forward and see where it will go in the community. So thank you, Kelso. I know you're out there. I just wanted to thank you for your leadership on that commission, as well as the others that were there that night. I attended Veterans Day, which was for the first time back in Sonoma. We had a wonderful ceremony. Mayor Pro Tem Agramonte and Councilmember Cook came with me to that particular event. And just want to say that they are having their little holiday dinner on December 8th, so you should check in with them. And then I think one of the most rewarding meetings was our celebration of our exemplary leader here in Sonoma, our city manager, Carol Giovanato. And this was at an event in which our other distinguished exemplary woman, Rachel Hundley, was at this event. So Madeline and I went to support our, women here and in leadership. And I just wanted to say how incredible it was to see the recognition of Carol, well-deserved, I might add. And also to hear panel discussions from Rachel and other women that were profiled at this event. So it was broadcasting live as well, and I had 3 phone calls about this event. So I just wanted to tell you they actually saw what was going on there, which I think was a great deal. I will be going to Ag and Open Space District on December 8th. It'll be my last time for that particular committee, but I just wanted to alert some of the people in the community that they'll be talking about the acquisition program, both the update and overview. We're also going to be talking a little bit about the mitigation administrative policy update, and there is a new program for the Ag and Open Space that is the comprehensive plan update. I won't go into water. And the last thing is, how wonderful is it, David, that the Sonoma Clean Power is putting together these wonderful finance programs for electric vehicles? And that, for me, was one of the most outstanding items. So for more information on this, I got a Facebook posting. I also received a LinkedIn posting. This is the Evergreen program. And I suggest if you are looking for maybe that extraordinary holiday purchase, that you go to the website of the Regional Climate Protection Authority and you learn a little bit more about the program. At our meeting for transportation, we also approved, this is the program here. We also approved the Measure M in the draft form, and this will be coming to City Council, other councils, I should say, other cities for both public review, probably in libraries and whatever. This is a very informative document about what Measure M is doing and its plan. So it's a very easy read for most of the public to get through, and it also gives you an idea of where dollars are being spent throughout the county, other than just, you know, here in Sonoma. So with that, that's rather long. I wanted to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. Not everyone, you know, of course, is looking rapidly towards that wonderful event. You know, a lot of people are in need this year, and I just ask you, if you have the ability to share or to give to those who don't, please do so, because this is a community that cares. You can see that by the actions of Councilmember Edwards and some of the other local community members to support, you know, all the actions that need to happen here to make it a community. And we've gone through many issues tonight where we've seen where some people don't have housing, some people are homeless, some people don't know where their family is and are disconnected. And it's our community that actually gets together in this particular celebration here at the Vets Building that shows that anyone can walk in and everyone can be part of a feast. And it is a feast, Gary, all right, that is provided for them. And no matter who they are or what walk of life that they're in. And it's an incredible show of community volunteerism as well. So this is a great community action. And I just want to wish staff and council a happy Thanksgiving, as well as the public. So with that, we'll go to the city manager comments and announcements, including announcements from successor agency staff. Okay. And now we'll have comments from the public. Anyone wishing to give a comment from the public, please step up. Seeing none, I will move to adjourn this meeting to the next regular meeting of December 12th, 2016. And we'll see you soon. Have a happy holiday season.